Chapter 4004. The bodyguard nodded. He knew. Why did Cobra make such arrangements? Xia, they had never taken it to heart. They had even teased him with that unlucky guy in the past. Unexpectedly, Cobra trusted this Asian man more and more. It was a result that made him unhappy. In the ward, Luke looked at Xia Jinyuan, who had fallen asleep again. He stood there for a while with a complicated look in his eyes. Then he got up and left. The moment he closed the door, Xia Jinyuan opened his eyes. If he were Luke, he would definitely contact his country and report the progress of the investigation. He also wanted to, but he had to bear with it for a while. They should be out of danger now. He did not know how little Fox was. Was she seriously injured? Her waist had been injured before, and now she was hurt by him again. He did not know if there would be any sequelae. She must be worried about him now. He hoped she would not be too sad because of him. He had promised to come back alive. He never went back on his words. He would definitely come back alive to see her. His wife was waiting for him in China. How could he break his promise? Xia Jinyuan closed his eyes. His thoughts were in a mess. Gradually, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. Yi Qian and the others had rested and started their march. They needed to reach the Mekong River within 48 hours. They had to speed up. The ships arranged to take them back to China had already started working. There were a total of 2 ships. A total of more than 30 people would disguise themselves as workers and follow the cargo ships back to China. Lulu and Zhou Yijin were the most tired of the 48-hour march. They were military personnel and had never undergone harsh and high-intensity training. The rapid march caused big blisters to form on the soles of their feet. After the blisters burst, the 2 of them felt heart-wrenching pain with every step they took. Fortunately, there were so many male soldiers around. They took turns to take care of them and carry them for a while. The whole march did not slow down. Lula looked at Yi Qian as if she was looking at a monster. She did not complain at all along the way. Sometimes, she was even arranged to be on guard with the male soldiers. She had never seen a female soldier with such capabilities. This was the first time she had seen one, and she was in awe. Zhou Yijin was the same. She knew that her Aunt Lu was not simple, but she was not simple to the point that the male soldiers would sometimes listen to her arrangements and suggestions. This was really not simple. She didn't know if Six's brother knew that Aunt Lu wasn't simple. Now, she even suspected that Six's brother would be at a disadvantage when facing Aunt Lu. Aunt Lu, who was even more powerful than the male soldiers, had a beautiful appearance and was quite frightening. She had previously asked Aunt Lu how to leave the village. Aunt Lu had casually said, "Just leave like this." It was a simple answer, but for some reason, when he heard it, he felt a chill run down his spine. Her Aunt Lu was not a simple person. In any case, she knew and engraved it in her heart. Yi Qian did not know that her stamina, which was even stronger than the male soldiers, made Zhou Yijin feel afraid. After the reconnaissance helicopter above their heads flew away, the group of people began to climb the mountains again. They were originally in the jungle at the border between Myanmar and another country. Now, they were walking along the mountain range towards the Mekong River, which was connected to China's territory. Without any transportation, they could only rely on their own 2 feet. It had been 69 hours since the bloody battle that night. Now, they still had 6 more hours to go on the mountain road. In other words, they would reach the port at around 9 o'clock tonight. Chapter 4005. There had always been news about the 2 troops in the country. Knowing that they only had 6 hours to reach the Mekong River, Commander Xia, who had not slept well for several nights, finally smiled. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Commander-in-Chief Xia suddenly received a text message on his personal cell phone. The text message was so simple that it only had one word, 6, which translated to the Arabic number 6. 6 also had a very auspicious meaning, 6 good luck. This text message was not signed, but when Commander-in-Chief Xia saw it, his figure swayed a few times. 6 good luck. Everything went well for him, the devil with a knife in his chest. Good. Very good. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had been waiting for the news, suddenly had tears in his eyes. This kid, as the old master and madam said, was a lucky guy. Everything went well. Good. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not keep such a good news to himself, So he told Major General Yang. Xia Jinyuan was able to enter the Snowfield Brigade, which could be said to have helped Major General Yang a lot. Without Major General Yang's advice, Xia Jinyuan would not have thought that he would walk on another special military path. Knowing that the subordinate he had trained was safe and sound, Major General Yang pressed the corner of his eyes and whispered to Commander-in-Chief Xia, "Commander-in-Chief, Yuan once told me that he wants to become the youngest general by himself. If this continues, it is really possible." You beautified his original words. I'm sure his original words were not so subtle. How could Commander-in-Chief Xia not understand his son? Even if the father and son had once gone against each other, they were still father and son after all. Major General Yang heard that although Director Xia's voice was very tired, he was very relaxed. He smiled and said, "A father knows his son best." Yuan said that he wants to become the youngest general who can surpass your rank. He also said that when the time comes, you should salute him first every time you see him. Well, these were the original words. Commander-in-Chief Xia laughed and said, "Then I'll wait for that day to come." "Brat, you're quite ambitious. You want to drag me down? Ha, ha. You're itching for a beating." After laughing, Commander-in-Chief Xia said, "Inform his comrades in the team, especially Xiao Yi. Let her know that Old Six is safe." The vice captain had reported that Xiao Yi had seen the dagger pierce Old Six's chest with her own eyes. She, who did not know, spat out blood on the spot. This child cares about Old Six too much. He could not let her worry. Major General Yang replied, "Yes, sir." After ending the call, he immediately notified the Shuiyu Brigade. After receiving the news, the Shuiyu Brigade rushed to the Mekong River. When they received the news, their heavily painted faces were overjoyed. Even Case 7, who did not like to smile, grinned. Yi Jian understood. The torment that she had been carrying like a shackle was finally released. She, who had hidden her worries deep in her heart, smiled. She smiled until her eyes shone brightly like stars. They only held each other's hands tightly and didn't say why they were happy. The soldiers of the Cloud Leopard Commando team only knew that after a few days, their mysterious brothers, whose faces were still covered in paint, were all happy. They couldn't see their faces clearly. As for why they were happy, they did not know. Zhou Yijin did not know either. When she saw Yi Qian smile, she also smiled. Lulu, of course, smiled as well. How could they not smile when they would be returning to their country soon? That was what Lulu was thinking. That was why he laughed along. "Qing Niao, when the captain returns to his country, you can settle the score with him. We never thought of hiding it from you. It's all his orders. As the saying goes, every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. You can settle the score with him when the time comes." Chapter 4006. Now that Xia Jinyuan was fine, the T6 combatant quickly shifted the blame to Yi Qian. If he did not do so, he was afraid that he would be taught a lesson by Yi Qian. Then he would have to ask his girlfriend, Jia Xin, for help. If his girlfriend ignored him, he would feel so wronged. Therefore, if they did not shift the blame now, when would they? Now it was the best time to betray their comrades. The T6 combatant took the lead. The G3 combatant said to Yi Qian in a serious tone, "When the time comes, we'll support you unconditionally no matter how you want to teach him a lesson. Isn't that right, brothers?" "Yes, we'll support you unconditionally." They answered in unison. Although their voices were soft, they sounded imposing. Yi Jian looked at them, and the smile on her face widened. "Sorry, I'm petty. I'll remember that." Yi Qian covered his mouth and spoke with a grin. The male soldiers' hearts trembled when they saw his smile. It seemed like they had not shifted the blame away and had come back with another one. This was bad, this was bad. The arrival of the good news swept away the fatigue of the Snowfield Brigade's Special Forces soldiers. They walked so briskly that the male soldiers of the Cloud Leopard Commando team were horrified. Not only were they not tired at all, they were even walking so fast. It was the same for that female soldier. They were Special Forces soldiers from the Yun Province's military district after all. Yet they could not even compare to a female soldier. They could no longer maintain their dignity and want to cover their faces. 75 hours later, The members of the Cloud Leopard Commando team brought the female soldiers, Zhou Yijin and Lu Lu, onto a camouflaged workboat. 76 hours later, a group of 15 Special Forces soldiers from a snowfield brigade boarded the ship. The Chinese soldiers who had been secretly dispatched to Myanmar had finally returned home after ending their dangerous trip there. General Min Lai was so anxious that he had a big blister at the corner of his mouth. He had been stuck here for several days, but he still could not find any traces of the Chinese female soldiers. Could they have all flown back to China? General Min Lai was a little flustered and exasperated when he could not find the Chinese female soldiers. But what could he do? He had already set up checkpoints and sent people along the China-Myanmar border. He had even deployed helicopters to scout the area, but there was still no news of them after several days. But soon, he turned his attention elsewhere. Cobra, which had returned to Melbourne, transferred the profits from the first cooperation to General Min Lai's private account and began the second cooperation. Luke said to Xia Jinyuan, who was now able to slowly get up on his own, "Mr. Cobra has already completed a deal with General Min Lai. It seems that the two of them have a very pleasant cooperation." Xia Jinyuan, who did not care about these things, only said, "Not bad." He did not take it to heart at all. He only knew that his little fox must have known that he was still alive and well. Then, all that was left was to wait for him to return to his country. Xia Jinyuan sighed softly. He didn't even have time to be affectionate with her. He had to make it up to her when he returned to China. Sitting in the boat, they could already see that Yi Qian, who was on the Chinese side, was drinking plain water like wine. She was enjoying the cold river breeze and refused to be disturbed by anyone. She sat quietly alone, looking thin and lonely. Her comrades, who were silently watching her back, did not dare to disturb her. G3 sighed and said, "Let her be alone. Although we know that the captain is fine, it's not so easy to get over that hurdle." When she saw her boyfriend collapse in front of her, how desperate must she have been at that time? It was not easy for her to be able to sit alone, so let her be alone. Yi Jian, who rarely drank, didn't think about anything else. She just wanted to sit quietly by herself and not think about anything. She wanted to empty her mind, not talk, and not be disturbed. She wanted to give herself some space to be alone. Chapter 4007. She held the water bottle in her right hand while her left hand covered the area above her right arm. She held it tightly as if she was trying to grab onto something. The ship began to enter China's territory. In the morning fog, Yi Qian saw a bright red flag fluttering in the morning breeze. The color was so red and so dazzling. She also had the same color on her right arm. That night, her man placed his hand there and held it tightly until he said, "Go." The stab in his chest was too painful. There were many things he couldn't say. He could only cover the position of the flag on her arm with his hand and tell her that she needed to prioritize national affairs. He also wanted to let her know the importance of the country in his heart. No matter where he was, his heart had never left his country. Even when he was seriously injured, he didn't forget to touch the flag. "Captain Xia, I'll wait for your return in our country." Looking at the flag that was getting redder and redder in the morning fog, Yi Qian slowly stood up. There were orderly footsteps behind her. Yi Qian turned around and walked over with firm steps to complete the formation. "Salute." G3's hoarse but majestic voice rang out. All the team members stared at the flag that was fluttering in the wind. They raised their arms and saluted. They had returned to their country. "Q King, we've returned to our country. Please come back as soon as possible." The border police officers who boarded the ship to welcome them puffed out their chests. They held their steel guns and raised their chins slightly. They looked at the bright red flag with unwavering eyes like the Special Forces soldiers who were saluting. They returned victorious and did not disgrace their mission. Those who humiliate our country will be punished no matter how far away they are. A few minutes past 7 in the morning, Su Yu, the captain of the border anti-narcotics team, called. The two female soldiers protected by the Cloud Leopard Commandos had successfully returned to their country. After a short rest at the border station, they would go to the border hospital for a physical examination. Zhou Yijin, who was undergoing the physical examination, suddenly started crying for some reason. When the female military doctor who was examining her saw this, she gently waved her hand and signaled for everyone to leave. She wanted to let this female soldier cry for a while. Sometimes, crying was also a way to regulate one's emotions. It was better to cry a little. Yi Qian returned to China an hour later than Zhou Jin. She also checked into the border hospital and told the doctor about her condition. She first did a Wei CT scan before going to the doctor to remove the broken thorns that had pierced in her calf. She rolled up the corners of her pants and lay flat on the bed. The nurse beside her, who was holding the medical tray, couldn't bear to look away. Below the knees, there wasn't a single piece of undamaged skin. Bloody lines were drawn by the spikes, and there were even a few areas where the skin and flesh had been torn off. Even so, the male soldier who accompanied her to the checkup said that he had seen it and it wasn't a big problem. Wasn't it a big problem? There was not a single part of his calf that was healed, and he still called it not a big problem? What kind of situation would be considered a big problem? There was also the wound on her tongue. Although it had been stitched up, it still hurt for her when she examined it. The nitpicky doctor put on a pair of white medical gloves and said to Yi Qian, "You need to clean the wound with normal saline before you can nitpick. It will be a little painful, but just bear with it." As he spoke, he looked at the female soldier lying on the ground and sighed. "We can't use anesthetic needles. The pain will last for a long time. I'll speed it up as soon as possible." "Okay," Yi Qian answered with a smile, his eyes still closed. The pain would pass after a while. It wasn't a big deal. K7 said it wasn't a big deal, and Yi Qian also didn't think it was a big deal. They used a few bottles of normal saline to clean the wound. They used surgical tweezers to clean and wipe the wound with disinfectant cotton balls. The doctor didn't dare to use too much force. The nurse beside them was afraid that Yi Qian wouldn't be able to take it. So she kept saying, "Hang in there for a little longer. It's almost done. It's almost done." Chapter 4008. Yi Qian nodded and groaned sleepily. It was a little painful, but it was okay. After washing with a few bottles of saline, the doctor looked up at the female soldier with her eyes closed and said, "We'll start picking out the thorns now. Some thorns are too deep. You can tell me if you can't take it. Stop for a while before we start." The female soldier with her eyes closed did not answer. The nurse took a look and walked closer. She lowered her voice and said in surprise, "Director Dai, she's asleep." "Asleep?" Director Dai got up slightly and took a look. She was really asleep. He thought she would be in so much pain that she couldn't take it, but he didn't expect her to fall asleep. How tiring was that? Yi Qian, who had returned to China, was too tired. The pain in her legs couldn't stop the sleepiness from sweeping over her. Even when Director Dai, who was in charge of picking out the thorns, picked the thorns that were the deepest in her flesh, he didn't wake her up. The nurse's heart ached for her. It took 3 hours for Director Dai to pick out all the broken thorns in Yi Qian's calf. Looking at the bloody thorns on the tray, the nurse, whose scalp was tingling, hurriedly carried them out. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was about to push the door open, saw the tray in the nurse's hand. He looked at it seriously and asked the nurse, "Have you picked them all out?" This was the General Hospital of the Border Defense, so the nurse was very familiar with the ranks. When she saw that the person who asked her was a lieutenant general, she immediately said, "Chief, Director Dai has already picked out all the thorns. The female soldier has been sleeping and hasn't woken up yet." "Xiao Yi is asleep? If she's asleep, it's not good to go in and wake her up." Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had specially come to check on Yi Qian's condition, stopped. When Dr. Dai came out, as an elder, he asked very seriously about the situation. The CT results of Yi Qian's waist were already out. Dr. Dai took the CT photo from the nurse and answered seriously, "The overall situation is good. All the broken thorns in her calf have been picked out. Although there are signs of inflammation, it's not a big problem." Looking carefully at the photo, Director Dai saw that the chief sitting in front of him was so dignified that he didn't dare to look directly at him. Director Dai's face was tense. He smiled slightly. Commander-in-Chief Xia's tense expression relaxed when the doctor smiled. "From the looks of it, the most serious injury on his waist is not a big problem. His lumbar muscles are injured, and he needs to rest for 2 to 3 months. During these few months, he can't do excessive training. Commander-in-Chief Xia memorized everything and planned to let Yi Qian have a good rest for the next 2 to 3 months before he went to the University of Science and Technology. Yi Qian was fast asleep. Commander-in-Chief Xia went to the other wards to visit, but all of them were already asleep. Those who had to be examined and those who had to be treated fell asleep as soon as they were done. The border guards had sent an armed police soldier to watch the 4 drip in every ward. When they saw a lieutenant general enter the ward, they quickly saluted, but were gently stopped by Commander-in-Chief Xia. The Chinese men lying in the hospital bed were too tired. Just let them have a good night's sleep. She did not want to wake them up because of her arrival. Not all his comrades were asleep. G3 was not asleep. He was flipping through the medical records of every comrade so that he could grasp the situation of all his comrades immediately. Commander-in-Chief Xia pushed open the door to the last ward at the end of the corridor. G3, who still had an 4 drip in his arm, looked up. The commander-in-chief was here. He pulled out the needle directly from his arm. His movements were so fast that Commander-in-Chief Xia did not even have time to stop him. He pulled out the needle, jumped out of bed, saluted, and said, "Chief," all in one breath. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not expect his movements to be so fast. It was so fast that he was shocked. Chapter 4009. Chief. The voice was so loud that it woke up V8, who had fallen asleep. When he heard the word chief, V8, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. His first reaction was the same as G3's. This time, Commander-in-Chief Xia reacted. He shouted, "Don't move," and finally succeeded in stopping V8 from pulling out the needle. "Stop the bleeding on your arm first." Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had finished drinking, looked at G3, who was pulling out the needle quickly. His gaze swept over G3's arm that was soaked in blood, and he strode into the ward. V8 was awake. He sat on the bed and watched their commander-in-chief walk in with a serious expression. He pressed the call bell beside their bed to inform the nurse to come over and reinsert the needle. He glanced at G3, who was ordered to lie back on the bed by the commander-in-chief, and slowly lay back on the bed as well. It was a little scary. How could they lie down when the commander-in-chief was patrolling the room? "I'm here to see you. You don't have to look like you're facing a great enemy." Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was waiting for the nurse to come over, stood up and said to the two of them, "I didn't expect to wake you up. I'm very sorry." How could they let the commander-in-chief apologize? The two of them replied in unison, "Chief, you're too polite. You're welcome. I'm really sorry. You're all good men of our country. You didn't disgrace your mission and returned triumphantly. On behalf of our country and our people, I thank you. Thank you for defending the dignity of our country. Thank you for guarding our country's gates and letting those rascals know the consequences of insulting our country's prestige. Thank you." The commander-in-chief stood up and saluted the two iron-blooded soldiers. G3 and V8, who were sitting on the bed, saluted back at the same time. "Chief, this is our responsibility. Defending the dignity of the country and protecting the country's territory was what a soldier should do." Looking at their resolute eyes, Commander-in-Chief Xia felt deeply proud of them. It was precisely because of this group of contemporary soldiers who were not afraid of sacrifice and spilled their blood that the country was stable and the people were safe. Commander-in-Chief Xia waited until the nurse reinserted the needle into G3 and chatted with them for a while before letting them rest. He also ordered G3 to rest first before looking at his comrades' medical records. When he left, he took all the medical records with him, not giving G3 a chance to look at them again. After V8 watched the commander-in-chief leave, he whispered to G3, "The more I look at him, the more I feel that our captain and the commander-in-chief look alike. Both of them have the surname Xia. Do you think they're really father and son? How could they be father and son? They were father and son to begin with. If you know too much, you'll be silenced by the captain. Sleep." G3, who knew Xia Jinyuan's identity, glanced at V8, who was curious. Now, V8 was frightened by the information he revealed. He lay down on the bed, closed his eyes, and quickly fell asleep. Since the chief had ordered him to sleep, he had to obey the order and sleep. V8 was shocked by the sudden news. Father and son. Commander-in-Chief Xia and their captain were really father and son. F***CK. He actually had a crown prince by his side. He actually only found out today. In Rome, don't pretend to be asleep. Tell me, when did you find out about the captain's identity? G3's In Rong replied to his comrade with a snore. What did he find out? He was just as shocked as V8 when he found out that he had taken over the position of vice captain. He actually didn't know that he had a crown prince by his side. He had even fought with the crown prince before and even discussed how to spar with him. When his identity was exposed, he almost wanted to desert. Chapter 40:10. That's why sometimes it's not good to be too low-key. It's easy to scare your comrades. G3 fell asleep as he thought about it. V8 bit on the blanket and eventually fell asleep as well. Finally, the good men who returned to China put down their armor and fell asleep without worrying about the dangers around them. When Yiqian opened her eyes, the warm sunset happened to shine through the glass in the ward. She blinked lightly and couldn't tell how long she had slept. Was it a day and a night? Or is it just a day? You're awake? Did you sleep well? A kind and deep voice sounded. Yiqian, who was so familiar with the sunset that she was squinting at, sat up from the hospital bed. Commander-in-Chief Xia's voice. Why is the Commander-in-Chief here? Commander-in-Chief Xia felt quite helpless. Are all the monkeys? They pulled out the needles when they wanted to and got up when they wanted to. Can't they give me some psychological buffer so that I can react? Commander-in-Chief Xia was much more relaxed in front of his future daughter-in-law. He walked over and said to Yiqian, "Child, you've scared me. Lie down quickly. Don't pull on the injury on your waist." After saying that, he said to the armed police standing guard beside him, "Get the doctor to come over and take a look." "Yes, Chief." The armed police sent by the border guards hurriedly left the ward as if he had been granted amnesty. He had to control the number of times he blinked when he was in the same room as the chief. It was too stressful. Yiqian had no intention of lying down. Now, she was not as afraid of Commander-in-Chief Xia as before. Especially when she heard him say child, Yiqian knew that she was not facing the Commander-in-Chief of the military, but her own elder. "Why are you here?" Yiqian, who was in a good mood after waking up, asked in surprise with bright eyes. "How long have you been here? Why didn't you wake me up? I kept you waiting." The injury to her tongue made her speech a little slurred, but it was much better than before. Seeing that she had no intention of lying down, Commander-in-Chief Xia glanced at the edge of the bed, then bent down and shook the rocker that could control the movement of the bed. Amidst the creaking sounds, the Commander-in-Chief smiled and said, "You were sleeping too soundly, so I couldn't bear to wake you up. Don't you want to lie down? Then sit down and talk to Dad. Don't talk too fast, or your tongue will hurt." In front of Yiqian, Commander-in-Chief Xia directly skipped addressing him as uncle during the period when couples were dating freely. He already considered himself as father. In the past, Yiqian would have been embarrassed to hear that, but now she was used to it. However, he was still a little embarrassed at this moment. He had already let the Commander-in-Chief serve him. If he had known, he would have asked the armed police for help. "Dad, take a rest. It's very comfortable for me to lean on you like this." Yiqian did not ask the Commander-in-Chief to adjust the tilt of the bed. He followed the Commander-in-Chief's advice and called him Dad, which made the smile on Commander-in-Chief Xia's face deepen. Commander-in-Chief Xia sat by the bed and looked at Yiqian, who had lost a lot of weight and had a smaller face than before. He sighed and said, "You have to rest well during this period of time. You can't force yourself when you go back to school. If you don't take good care of your waist injury, it will become a chronic illness and affect your future life. You have to work hard when it's time to work hard and rest when it's time to rest. You can't mix the two. Dad will call your school when the time comes and ask them to keep an eye on you, lest you let your guard down and let your guard down." Yiqian, who was leaning against the bed, listened and nodded from time to time. At this time, he had to be sensible and not go against his elders who cared about him. Chapter 40:11. Every time Captain Xia and the commander-in-chief met, the father and son would quarrel. So she would go along with the commander-in-chief and not let him think that she was a thorn in his side. Yi Qian's obedience made Commander-in-Chief Xia very comfortable. That was why daughters were better than sons. Sons were born to make their parents angry, just like Six's brother. When had he ever listened to him? Every time he opened his mouth, his arrogant look would easily ignite the anger in his heart, making him want to shoot him to death. Daughters were still the best. Look, they were so considerate and obedient. In the future, he would rather have a granddaughter. He didn't even want a grandson anymore. If his grandson inherited all the shortcomings of his devil-incarnate father, there would be chaos in the family with two devils incarnate. Yi Qian, who had always been obedient in front of his elders, waited for Commander-in-Chief Xia to finish speaking before nodding and replying. I'll listen to Dad's arrangements. I'll take good care of him. That's right. If Six's brother were as obedient as you, I wouldn't have to worry about my hair turning white. Commander-in-Chief Xia smiled and nodded. He naturally changed the topic to Xia Jinyuan, and the smile on his face did not fade. Right now, he's also lying on the hospital bed. As for me, I'll leave all the nagging to you. Xiaoyi, don't think that I'm noisy. The sad topic became a joke when it came to Commander-in-Chief Xia. Yi Qian, whose smile had faded a little, could not help but smile again. I'll definitely take good care of your concern for him and pass it on to him when the time comes. Yes, you have to tell him. He's arrogant in front of me and even wants me to take the initiative to salute him in the future. Listen, is this what a son should say? Why is he always thinking of kicking me out of my position? He's always had his own opinions. Once he's decided on something, even 10 horses can't pull him back. When I want to teach him a lesson, he'll turn around and say that I'm meddling in other people's business. He'll only be happy when he makes me angry. But this kid does have some skills. Every time I object to something, he'll do it beautifully and show off in front of me after he's done. I really want to slap that smug face of yours. Commander-in-Chief Xia scolded his unfilial son in front of his future daughter-in-law. It sounded like he was scolding him, but he was actually telling Yi Qian that Xia Jinyuan would never make a wrong decision. How could the intelligent Yi Qian not understand? Her gaze was very gentle as she smiled. Of course, she knew that Captain Xia would not do anything rash. As Commander-in-Chief Xia's future father-in-law, he was worried. When he found out that the injury on Yi Qian's face was caused by his son again, Commander-in-Chief Xia wished he could rush up to his unfilial son who would lose his future daughter-in-law at any moment and scold him for several days and nights. Everyone said that coaxing had to be done, but look at what he was doing. It had nothing to do with coaxing. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was afraid that Yi Qian would dump Xia Jinyuan, felt that he needed to step in and coax Yi Qian on behalf of his unfilial son. Yi Qian said slowly with a smile, Captain Xia is very smart and capable. Every decision he makes is carefully considered. He won't make a decision casually. Our comrades in the team are especially convinced by him. Sometimes, they feel that there's nothing he can't do. I even think that there's nothing in this world that can stump him. He spoke in a very admiring tone, and even the light in his eyes became much brighter. Commander-in-Chief Xia really wanted to ask, are they talking about the same person now? Why doesn't it sound like it? Chapter 40:12. Dad, you probably don't know how powerful Captain Xia is in the military. 2 years ago, new recruits joined the team. They were all top soldiers selected from various military regions in the country. They weren't convinced by Captain Xia at all, but all of them were convinced in the end. It didn't take long for him to take care of them all. They were definitely not talking about the same person. What he heard was a completely different version. Commander-in-Chief Xia thought silently in his heart. The version he heard was that the new recruits were most convinced by Comrade Yi Qian, not Comrade Xia Jinyuan. The veterans told me before that they weren't convinced at the time, but they were convinced in the end. Captain Xia is really capable. Dad, do you have some misunderstandings about Captain Xia? Yi Qian felt that it was necessary for him to put in a good word for his man in front of his father-in-law. As a father, Commander-in-Chief Xia felt that this conversation would end with him suffering from internal injuries. Misunderstandings? This child actually said that he had misunderstood his unfilial son. There was no misunderstanding at all. Commander-in-Chief Xia said very seriously, "Xiao Yi, tell Dad the truth. Does old Six treat you well? Does he bully you usually? Otherwise, why would he always try to clear old Six's name?" He almost felt that he wasn't talking about the same person. The smile in Yi Qian's eyes deepened. He nodded heavily and answered truthfully, "He treats me very well. Dad, don't worry. He doesn't dare to bully me." The doctor pushed the door open and came in. Commander-in-Chief Xia pressed his chest. The doctor came just in time. He needed to go out and take a breather. He had to take a breather. Yi Qian, who was putting in a good word for his man for the first time, didn't forget to add, "Dad, Captain Xia is really good and hardworking. You really misunderstood him in the past." Commander-in-Chief Xia, who needed to take a breather, stopped in his tracks and almost tripped over himself. "My child, I have to take a cold shower. I'll have a good chat with you later." Did that unfilial son really threaten Xiao Yi and make this child put in a good word for him today? She didn't do that in the past. In the past, she would agree with him from time to time. Why did she change today? The doctor checked Yi Qian's calf and waist, while Commander-in-Chief Xia went to wash his face with cold water. Commander-in-Chief Xia entered the bathroom and turned on the faucet. A figure in a military uniform was reflected in the mirror. He looked up and saw that G3 had already stood up and greeted him. "Hello, Chief." The Commander-in-Chief washed his hands and turned to G3. "Give me some time. I want to talk to you." G3, who was about to enter the nursing home, felt his lower abdomen tighten, and an inexplicable chill ran down his spine. "Captain, you did stab him, but now it's your comrades who are taking the blame for you. When I get married, if you don't give me a big red packet, you'll be letting me down." Commander-in-Chief Xia kept asking about Xia Jinyuan's situation in the army, as well as whether his comrades in the army had any thoughts about Xia Jinyuan. He acted as if he knew his son very well and wanted to make decisions for his son. Of course, this was what G3 thought. Whether their captain was good or not, he had to be good. He didn't even need to think about how good he was. From being responsible to being cautious and conscientious, to sharing weal and woe, advancing and retreating together, G3 spoke in full detail about the captain in his heart, and he said it very proudly. There's never a problem with his decisions. If there's a problem, he'll never make his own decisions. He'll definitely discuss it with all of our comrades. Once danger comes, he'll definitely be the first to rush in, and the last to retreat will still be him. He'll often joke with us, and he'll also train us until we can't even get up. We went from being unconvinced at the beginning to being convinced wholeheartedly, and it's all because we admire our captain. Chapter 40:13. Commander-in-Chief Xia listened attentively. The more he listened, the more serious his expression became. He was clearly the devil in the family, but he wasn't. In Xiao Ye's mouth, he was a responsible man. In his comrade's mouth, he was a charismatic and courageous captain. Was this really his son? Why did it sound like two different people? Or did he really not understand his son? Was that why he felt this way? He also knew that Sixth Brother was an unyielding soldier with a clear conscience. In order to find out the last force by Cobra's side, he didn't hesitate to use a ruthless method and let his comrades stab him in the heart. Although he always said that he didn't like Sixth Brother, he carried him on his back. He was proud of having such an outstanding son. He always knew that his son, who relied on his own ability to gain a foothold in the army and become a lieutenant colonel, was very capable. However, he didn't expect him to have such a high position in the hearts of his comrades. Good job, Sixth Brother. Men with family Xia should be like this. Born a hero, dead a hero. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who originally thought that Yi Qian was bullied by Xia Jinyuan and needed to come out to take a breather, saw a new side of his son. A side that he didn't know, but that made him proud. Commander-in-Chief Xia finally knew why Yi Qian admired Xia Jinyuan so much. It was easy to worship him when he had too many shining points. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who no longer thought that he and his future daughter-in-law were talking about the same person, returned to the ward. G3, who returned to the ward, wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said to V8 with lingering fear, "Just now, the commander-in-chief stopped me and asked me to talk to Captain." At that time, I really thought that he was here to settle scores with me. I was so scared that I almost deserted. F***CK, then what did you say? V8 was so shocked that his eyes widened. The commander-in-chief only asked you to talk to him, right? He didn't ask anyone else. F***CK. He wanted to be a deserter too. That should be it. Should I inform K7 and let him be mentally prepared? G3 pretended to go out again. V8 stopped him. Don't go. If you bump into the commander-in-chief, won't he know immediately that you went to inform K7? What did you say to the commander-in-chief? You didn't say anything bad about the captain, did you? Captain has nothing to hide from you. You didn't say anything wrong, did you? Captain, what's wrong with letting me say it? I'll tell you the truth. There's no expression on the commander-in-chief's face. I can't tell if he's happy or not. The commander-in-chief wouldn't be the commander-in-chief if you could tell if he was happy or not. V8 glanced at the door of the ward as he spoke. He then whispered, "Why don't we return to the squad tonight? I'm a little nervous to be in the same hospital as the commander-in-chief." He had punched and kicked the commander-in-chief's son and even stabbed him in the chest. Although there was a reason for it, and he had no choice but to do so, and even the commander-in-chief knew about it. But now, he felt a little guilty and lacked confidence. Don't panic, don't panic. Don't forget that we still have Qing Niao as our trump card. Think about Qing Niao. Calm down, calm down. G3 comforted his comrades and himself. The trump card, Qing Niao, was chatting happily with Commander-in-Chief Xia. The topic continued to revolve around Xia Jinyuan. Even though Commander-in-Chief Xia already knew a new side of his son, when he saw Yi Qian's infatuated gaze, Commander-in-Chief Xia was a little worried. Wasn't Xiao Yi the one who suppressed Old Six in the past? Why had everything changed? If this continued, would he become a woman who was afraid of her husband? That wouldn't do. Men with family Xia were all afraid of their wives, and Old Six was no exception. Chapter 4014. Then, Commander-in-Chief Xia said earnestly, "Xiao Yi, you can't flatter Sixth Brother too much. That's not right. I've told you before that Sixth Brother is someone who will shine brightly if you give him some sunshine. You can't flatter him too much. You can't spoil him. Men can't be spoiled. Once you're spoiled, you'll go wrong. Take your uncle, for example. He's in a high position, but in front of your aunt, he can't say anything harsh. Your uncle is the same. He once challenged your aunt. In the end, the old madam came forward and took a picture of your uncle and grandson." Commander-in-Chief Xia said too smoothly. He immediately changed his words. Your uncle immediately became obedient and didn't have to challenge your aunt anymore. Then, in front of your eldest brother, second brother, third brother, and fourth brother, you've seen them. When your sisters-in-law play cards, they have to serve tea and water. It's not that your sisters-in-law are powerful, but they can't go home all year round. Your sisters-in-law handle all the big and small matters at home. When they come back from vacation, they have to perform well to make up for what they owe their wives. Xiao Yi, Dad also hopes that you can continue to carry on the glorious tradition of family Xia. Don't lose it. Yes, Dad knows that Sixth Brother is indeed powerful. I also admit that I misunderstood him before. After chatting with your comrades for a while, Dad is proud of Sixth Brother. You can't be fascinated by him just because he's powerful. That won't do. Sixth Brother, you have to hold on. Otherwise, Dad won't be at ease. Yi Qian opened his mouth a few times, but was suppressed by Commander-in-Chief Xia's dignified gaze. Sixth Brother is lying down now, and so are you. You don't have to feel that you owe him anything. You don't owe him anything. When he risked his life, you also risked your life. When he was in danger, you were also in danger. There's nothing that you owe him. Remember what Dad said today? Don't put shackles on yourself. That's his duty, the mission given to him by the military uniform. Don't regret it once you've made the choice. You'll be the same in the future. You'll be a hero in life and a hero in death. You were born on this path, a path that can last for thousands of years. Defend the dignity of the motherland and protect the integrity of the land. This land is magnificent because of you. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. There is no retreat, only forward. This is the true nature of a soldier. You don't owe him anything, do you hear me? The last sentence was as loud as thunder. Yi Qian, who had been leaning against the wall, instantly straightened his body and accepted Commander-in-Chief Xia's admonishment with a solemn expression. Then, he successfully made her swallow back some of the unfinished words in her heart. Commander-in-Chief Xia nodded in satisfaction when he saw that Yi Qian had listened to him. Seeing that it was getting late, he told Yi Qian to rest while he went to see if his niece, Yi Jin, had woken up. Dad, Captain Xia and I will always be fine. Don't worry. And Dad, I've always remembered what you said. I haven't forgotten it. I admire Captain Xia very much, not only because of his personality, but also because of his loyalty to this country. I've always admired him, but I definitely won't let him bully me. After all, sometimes life needs a little dominance, don't you think so? She was indeed the daughter-in-law that he was satisfied with. She had a high level of comprehension. Now that he knew that she would wait patiently for Sixth Brother's return and that there was no psychological trauma in her heart, he was relieved. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had deliberately waited for Yi Qian to wake up to talk to him, left the ward in satisfaction. Chapter 40:15. When Commander-in-Chief Xia learned that Yi Qian saw her comrade stabbing a knife into Old Six's chest, and that she couldn't stop herself from spitting out blood, his expression suddenly became serious. He immediately called a psychiatrist to consult about psychological problems. Commander-in-Chief Xia was deliberately waiting for Yi Qian to wake up. He wanted to counsel Yi Qian as soon as possible so that she wouldn't have any post-war sequelae. Many post-war sequelae were caused by seeing their comrades fall down. He would never allow Yi Qian to have this kind of sequelae that would trouble her for the rest of her life. Commander-in-Chief Xia was now relieved. His son and future daughter-in-law, whom he was proud of, had both returned safely. He could finally have a good night's sleep tonight. Zhou Yijin slept soundly, but her sleeping posture was not very good. Commander-in-Chief Xia covered her with a quilt and sat quietly by the side to rest. The three children at home were all fine, so he felt very at ease sitting there. Yijin had never suffered much since she was young. Although she entered the army as a performing arts soldier, the hardships she suffered were not as much as Xiaoya's 1 month of training. But this time, she was also frightened. She looked like she had lost a lot of weight, so she needed to nourish herself. Commander-in-Chief Xia sat quietly for a while before getting up to leave. He had been in Yun province for many days, so it was time to return to the military. Zhou Yijin, who was awakened by hunger, opened her eyes in a daze. She inadvertently glanced at the bedside, and then she saw a black shadow. She screamed, "Ah!" The armed police outside had already put their hands on the door lock, but after thinking about it, they withdrew their hands. The chief probably didn't turn on the lights, so the female soldier was frightened. Zhou Yijin was frightened, and Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was thinking about this, was also shocked. He said in a deep voice, "Yijin, I'm your third uncle." The lights were turned on with a bang. Zhou Yijin's little face was pale. She looked at her uncle with shock in her eyes, and her teeth were chattering. "Third uncle, you scared me out of my wits. I thought I was kidnapped again. There are a lot of people outside guarding you, and you're still afraid of being kidnapped? Who can kidnap you?" Commander-in-Chief Xia rubbed her temples, which were stung by the scream, and wanted to ask her where she was feeling unwell, but Zhou Yijin hurriedly said, "Third uncle, have you seen Aunt Lu? Is Aunt Lu back? How is she now? Is he also in the hospital?" After a series of questions, Commander-in-Chief Xia couldn't help but laugh. This girl was clearly 2 years older than Xiaoyi. Aunt Lu. She called her so smoothly. "Your Aunt Lu is fine. She's in the same hospital as you. I just saw her. She's fine. Just take good care of yourself." When Zhou Yijin heard this, she fell back on the bed heavily and started to talk about her own matters. In the end, she sobbed softly and said to Commander-in-Chief Xia, "Third uncle, I don't think I can ever become a female soldier like Aunt Lu, and I can't be like Aunt Lu who came to save me without being afraid at all because of my words. Third uncle, am I very selfish? Aunt Lou can risk her life to save me, but I've asked myself countless times whether I can do it. There's always only one answer. I can't do it. I really can't do it. It seemed that the one who had the most psychological trauma was not Xiao Yi, but his niece Jean. Commander-in-Chief Xia poured a glass of warm water and handed it over. He said kindly, "How can a silly girl like you think like that? You and your Aunt Lou have different responsibilities, so naturally everything is different. Human nature is selfish. Besides, you are selfish and you know how to protect yourself. Let me ask you, if one day you know that your Aunt Lou is in danger, will you find someone to save her? Will you be afraid of revenge?" Chapter 40:16. Zhou Jean, whose eyes were still swollen, shook her head. "I can't save Aunt Lou by myself. I'll definitely find someone. I'm not afraid of revenge." Yes, this is the biggest difference between selfishness and self-protection. Every one of us has to learn to protect ourselves first. Your Aunt Lou is no exception. Think about it. Did she do anything to protect herself? I think so. I can see it from the photos. Commander-in-Chief Xia had never studied psychology, but at his age, he had experienced so many ups and downs, so he knew very well how to counsel others. Moreover, this was his niece, whom he knew very well. After hearing his words, Zhou Yijin seemed to understand something, but she was still a little uncertain. "Third uncle, you're not coaxing me, right? You're a child. Do you still need to be coaxed?" Commander-in-Chief Xia laughed. "You're already an adult. It's long past the age where you need to be coaxed. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat something? Your Aunt Lou probably hasn't slept yet. Do you want to go and see her?" Zhou Yijin immediately got up. I'm not hungry. I'm going to see Aunt Lou." Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had rushed back to the capital overnight, let the two juniors in the family chat by themselves. They were both smart children and would always have a good chat. They would counsel and comfort each other. Since they had shared experiences, they would help each other through the most difficult times. Commander-in-Chief Xia only hoped that the juniors in the family would be well. Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't let Yi Qian send her off. He told Yi Qian and Zhou Yijin to take good care of themselves, and then chatted with the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade who had woken up. That night, Commander-in-Chief Xia rushed back to the capital. China's successful rescue of the female soldiers didn't cause any international waves. Other than China itself, there was only Burmese General Min Lai. After searching for a week without finding the Chinese female soldiers, General Min Lai no longer set up checkpoints to look for them. He already knew that the Chinese female soldiers had already returned to China. Qin Mongsane's trusted aides wanted to make a big deal out of it, but they were suppressed by General Min Lai in the end. 2 days ago, Yi Qian, who had returned to a company in the Southern Province military region, saw an international news report that Burmese General Min Lai had sent troops to capture a drug cartel that had been operating at the borders of the 4 countries for a long time and relied on drug trafficking to make a living. He had also executed the 3 leaders of the cartel. For a time, the international media reported on General Min Lai. Yi Qian glanced at General Min Lai, who was speaking righteously on the television. He picked up the remote control and changed the channel. As a patient, she had returned to the Nangguang military region and had been staying in the armed police hospital. She was exempted from all training and was only waiting to return to school the day after tomorrow. Over the past 2 days, he had been talking to his comrades who had returned to the team. He found out that G3 was on leave after returning to the team. He was on wedding leave and was holding the wedding that should have been held last year on the 15th day of the first lunar month, the Lantern Festival. Therefore, after she returned to school and reported, she immediately took a plane to G3's hometown to witness G3's wedding with several comrades who were on leave with her. At 6:00 in the evening, the students from a National University of Science and Technology, who had been transferred to the company with her, appeared in the ward with 2 large fruit baskets. They only found out today that Yi Qian, who had gone out some time ago, was injured and hospitalized in the armed police hospital. They would return to school the next day, and the commander of 3rd Company would come with them to the hospital to visit. The commander of 3rd Company looked at Yi Qian and did not say anything else. He only smiled and said, "Scars represent medals. Congratulations, Yi Qian, for obtaining several medals in one go." He knew that the female soldier, Yi Qian, had some background. As expected, her injury had alerted the military headquarters. The regiment commander even personally instructed Yi Qian not to ask about her after returning to the company and to go to the hospital to recuperate. It was hard to say how serious her injury was, but it was obvious that her tongue had been severely injured. Chapter 4017. Looking at the young cadet's expressionless face, 3rd Company's commander sighed in his heart. Such a promising female soldier. The next time he saw her, her rank would probably be higher than his. 3rd Company's commander said a few words to Yi Qian and then left. He had to give some space to the young cadets. Once the commander left, the cadets exploded. Ding Ling was a female cadet. She saw Yi Qian's legs covered in scars and his tongue injured so badly that he couldn't speak properly. She sat down and held Yi Qian's hand. She said with lingering fear, "You almost scared us to death. The company commander told us at noon that you were injured and hospitalized. We weren't in the mood to train the entire afternoon. How did you get injured when you were fine? You're so injured." As she spoke, Ding Ling's voice sounded like she was about to cry. Although they had only known Yi Qian for a short time, they were all too familiar with him. When they heard that Yi Qian was injured and hospitalized, they all began to worry. They even thought that Yi Qian was seriously injured. Now it seemed that he was fine. Other than the scars on his legs, his body was fine. I was participating in a drill and didn't pay attention when I fell into a pit. I was lucky and only got my legs pierced by the spikes below. I also bumped into my waist and got bitten on my tongue. Other than that, I'm fine. It's nothing serious. I even troubled you all to come and see me." Yi Qian was a little embarrassed. He wasn't seriously injured. In the end, he had to make such a big fuss and make them all worried for him. "It's nothing serious. Look at your pretty little face. There's still new scars on it. Such a pretty face. It's such a pity that you're disfigured." After hearing her words, the cadets were more or less relieved. Ding Ling laughed and joked. The solemn atmosphere in the ward was instantly swept away and became lively and cheerful. It wasn't until 7:30 that the cadets who needed to rush back before roll call got up and left the hospital. The next day, 3rd Company's commander asked Ding Ling to come over and accompany Yi Qian back to school in a sleeper. The rest of the cadets returned to school in hard seats. On the day of returning to school, Yi Qian did not return to school with Ding Ling. They had already arrived at the train station. Yi Qian, who still had an hour before boarding the train, received a call. He rushed to the airport at top speed and flew straight to Beijing. On New Year's Eve, Uncle Chun, whom she had spoken to on the phone, was currently at the General Military Hospital. As for what had happened, the sniper instructor who had spoken to her on the phone said that it was best to ask the doctor. Yi Qian, who had been chatting and laughing with the students just a second ago, suddenly paled. He only had time to say to Ding Ling, "Something has happened to my family, so I have to return to the capital." Yi Qian picked up his luggage, and before Ding Ling could reply, he had already disappeared from her line of sight like a gust of wind. "What happened? What happened to Yi Qian? Where are you going?" "Ding Ling, what happened to Yi Qian? What happened?" When the male students saw this, they couldn't help but ask Ding Ling. Ding Ling didn't even have time to react. She said in a daze, "I don't know." She just said that something happened to her family and she had to return to the capital. Before I could say anything, she ran away. "Something happened to home? What happened?" "Let's contact Yi Qian first. Ask him about the situation before we report back to the school," Yu Rong said in a low voice. Not many of the students had cell phones. He didn't have one either. After flipping through his contact list, he asked one of the students who had a cell phone to contact Yi Qian. Yi Qian didn't hear him. He ran all the way out of the train station and jumped into a taxi before taking out his cell phone to call the school. When he saw the missed call, he called back and said, "I'll contact the school myself. Have a safe trip. I'll contact you when I arrive." Chapter 4018. Yi Qian's voice sounded steady, but in reality, her hands were clenched tightly on her knees. Uncle Chun was in trouble. She had to rush over to see Uncle Chun. But why did something happen to Uncle Chun in Beijing? Would he go to Beijing? Why did he go to Beijing? Ever since Li Chuhai appeared and knew that Uncle Chin's identity might be exposed, Uncle Chun had always been at the sniper base and had never stepped out of the base. Why did something happen to him in Beijing this time? The person who informed Yi Qian was the instructor at the sniper base. He knew that Instructor Chun had no other family members besides Yi Qian. After informing Yi Qian, he waited anxiously. Their Instructor Chun was not in a normal situation. He had just walked out of the train station and then he was shot. He was shot in the train station in Beijing, so the entire train station was under control. The armed police were dispatched to quickly evacuate the crowd and look for suspicious people. The instructor at the sniper base was worried that Principal Chun would not be able to survive, so he finally called Yi Qian. Commander-in-Chief Xia found out about Principal Chin's illness even later than Yi Qian. Yi Qian arrived in Beijing at 7 o'clock in the evening. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not find out that Principal Chun was in trouble until 9 o'clock in the evening after the meeting ended. Yi Qian had already arrived at the hospital. She was still injured, so she was talking to the instructor at the sniper base while running towards the elevator. She was very fast, like a gust of wind. Before she could see clearly, she was already several meters away. In the elevator, Qin Xiu was stunned when he saw the figure suddenly rushing in. When he saw Yi Qian press the button for the operating room, Qin Xiu frowned. Operating room? Old Master Fu? Beside him was an upper-class lady who looked somewhat similar to Qin Xiu. She was holding a pile of test reports in her hand, and a trace of worry could be seen on her well-maintained youthful face. She then said to Qin Xiu, "We couldn't find anything wrong with him every time he came back. Xiu, do you want to go abroad to have a look? Let's see if we can find a problem overseas." This was Mrs. Qin. She had a headache. After dinner today, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her head. Qin Xiu immediately accompanied her to the hospital for a checkup. After a series of checks, there were no problems, so Mrs. Qin felt uneasy. Yi Qian did not pay attention to her surroundings. All her attention was on the rising numbers in the elevator. Mrs. Qin, who was worried about her own affairs, did not pay much attention to her either. Even after she finished speaking, she did not hear Qin Xiu reply. Mrs. Qin looked up from the checklist and saw her son staring unblinkingly at a female student who had entered the elevator at some point. Mrs. Qin, who had never seen her son stare at a girl for a long time, could not help but find it strange. Could it be that this girl was more beautiful than the daughter of the Du family? Her son was stunned by her. However, staring at a girl like this was too rude. Mrs. Qin's expression changed slightly. She lowered her voice and reminded him, "Qin Xiu, help me take a look at the test report." Qin Xiu was not stunned by Yi Qian. He was wondering if something had happened to old Master Fu. Then, he remembered that Yi Qian's identity had not been made public by the Fu family yet. He suppressed his desire to ask about the situation and answered Mrs. Qin patiently. "It's a nervous headache. He needs to rest well. Don't worry too much and don't get angry. He'll recover naturally." Yi Qian, whose breathing had gradually stabilized, recognized Qin Xiu's voice. She did not take the initiative to greet him. She stood there and waited for Qin Xiu to leave the elevator first. Chapter 4019. There were still many people in the General Military Hospital at 8 o'clock. It was the same in the elevator. When the elevator reached the third floor, the doors opened again and a few more people came up. Yi Qian, who was originally standing in front, had no choice but to take a step back. Qin Xiu saw that Yi Qian, who was standing in front of him, didn't seem to have heard his voice. He didn't even turn his head slightly. What a heartless girl. He had confessed to her and said that he wouldn't cause her any trouble. He had made things so clear, but in the end, this heartless girl rejected him even as an ordinary friend. After all, they had once fought side by side and escaped from death together. He thought that he was different, but who knew? This difference meant that they couldn't even be friends. Heartless girl. Do you really have to draw such a clear line in our relationship? If we can't be lovers, we can't even be ordinary friends? Qin Xiu smiled bitterly and sighed softly in his heart. However, Mother Qin didn't realize that she was in the same elevator as the girl her son had a crush on. She saw a hint of helplessness in the smile on Qin Xiu's face and thought back to what Qin Xiu said just now. Mother Qin misunderstood. Mother Qin said softly with some displeasure, "I like to worry less and rest more, but when can I stop worrying about your matters? If you want me to rest, then don't make me worry." After all, they were in public, so Mother Qin didn't say much. However, Yi Qian was really close to the mother and son. Mother Qin's words drifted into Yi Qian's ears without missing a word. Qin Xiu knew that she had heard them, and his jade-like handsome face became a little awkward. When the elevator reached the 4th floor, someone exited and made a path in the middle, forcing Qin Xiu and Mother Qin to the side. Another person came in from the 4th floor, so Yi Qian, who was standing in front, also had to stand to the side. Qin Xiu, who was protecting Mother Qin from being squeezed, raised his arm. His bent arm suddenly bumped into Yi Qian's head, who was standing to the side at the same time. Qin Xiu himself didn't expect to bump into Yi Qian's head. The smile on his face became completely helpless. This time, he wouldn't be misunderstood by her again, right? Just now, he really didn't do it on purpose. It was purely an accident. My apologies. He apologized in a low voice. Even though it was purely an accident, there was a trace of anticipation in the depths of his heart, anticipation that she would turn around and look at him. Yi Qian did not turn around. She only tilted her head slightly, so that only Qin Xiu could see her side profile. She said calmly, "It's okay." It was a very indifferent answer. It was the estrangement between strangers. He thought that she would turn back to take a look, but in return, she was still ruthless. Although he didn't ask for it, his heart still ached when he couldn't get it. Qin Xiu didn't say anything more. She had already told herself everything. She and he were strangers who had nothing to do with each other. She had already let go of the life-or-death chase that time. She was the only one who was still living in the memory. When they arrived at the 6th floor, Qin Xiu escorted Mother Qin out of the elevator. Qin Xiu didn't turn back to take another look, but Mother Qin did. Although her gaze was gentle, she didn't hide the pickiness in her eyes. She wanted to see what the girl who made her son so absent-minded looked like. With one look, Mother Qin's eyes couldn't help but light up. Not bad. This girl's appearance was really better than the girl she introduced to Qin Xiu before. Her features were beautiful, and her eyes were flirtatious. Just by looking at her eyes, she felt that this girl had a good heart. She had a good appearance and a good heart. If she also had a good family background, then it would really be perfect. Yi Qian, who was looking ahead with a calm and natural gaze, felt Mother Qin turn her head to size her up. She didn't move her eyes, but she pretended not to see until the elevator door slowly closed. Chapter 40:20. Mother Qin didn't look at her too much. She didn't even have the chance to look at her in such a short time. When the elevator door closed, Mother Qin smiled and said, "No wonder you were distracted when you saw her. I took a look at her. She's a pretty good girl. Have you seen her before? Where is she from? I just saw her armband. She's a student of the National University of Science and Technology. It's very amazing for a girl to be admitted to the National University of Science and Technology. If you like her, I'll ask around for you. Oh, look, as long as I mention that there's hope for your marriage, my head doesn't even hurt anymore. People are in high spirits when they're in a good mood. I don't even want to see a doctor now." Qin Xiu felt helpless at Mother Qin's pressuring. He didn't want to pay attention to her at all, but he couldn't do that now. That was Yi Qian, not someone else. "Mom, you're thinking too much. I'm not distracted because of her. I'm just thinking if I should really send you abroad to have a look or to recuperate. You've been talking about that girl for a long time, but I don't know what she looks like. I also didn't pay attention to her." Mother Qin knew her son best. Although Qin Xiu denied it, Mother Qin didn't believe it. She looked at him suspiciously and said with a faint smile, "Sure, my son. Although I can't guess what you're thinking, I can still see some changes in you." You hit someone with your elbow and stared at the girl when you apologized. You probably want the girl to look back at you. All mothers were the same. Some things could be compared to dozens of experienced old criminal police officers. Even the slightest change couldn't escape their eyes, especially a mother who was anxious to settle her children's marriage. Yi Qian, who was in the elevator, didn't know what Mother Qin said. She had to go to the 8th floor first, where the sniper base's instructor was waiting for her. As soon as she arrived at the 8th floor, the elevator door opened with a ding. Yi Qian rushed out. The whole corridor was filled with Yi Qian's hurried footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. Just by listening to the footsteps, one could tell how anxious the person running was. The sniper base's instructor and the police officer in charge of the investigation were talking about the situation at that time. They had to cooperate with the investigation. Yi Qian ran over and looked at the sign at the door. That's right, it was the doctor's meeting room on the 8th floor. He knocked on the door a few times, but there was no response. Yi Qian pushed the door open and entered. He scanned the room and saw 3 uniformed police officers sitting at the conference table. The instructor who called him was sitting opposite them and was being questioned. Investigation? Interview? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, Yi Qian's expression became very serious. Something was amiss. Uncle Chun had fallen ill, so how could there be police officers around? Moreover, all of them had grave expressions on their faces. Something was wrong. She thought that they went to the doctor's meeting room because Uncle Chin's condition was serious and he needed to discuss with his family about his condition and the follow-up issues. However, her background as a police officer made her realize that this was not the case. The doctors saved people, the police handled the case. It was true that Uncle Chin was sick, but he was definitely not sick. She met the eyes of the 3 police officers, then looked at the base's instructor. She asked in a low voice, Uncle Chun didn't fall ill. Something happened to him, right? The police officer who was taking notes put down his pen and glanced at the female soldier on the phone. He didn't know what was going on, but when he saw that he and his colleague had hit the nail on the head, his eyes instantly became more serious. He stood up with his colleague. Hello, you're Uncle Chin's relative, Yi Qian, right? We're police officers from the Eastern District Branch. My surname is Liu. These 2 are my colleagues, Yin Qi and Ji Jia. Chapter 4021. The moment the instructor saw Yi Qian enter, he heaved a sigh of relief. Before Instructor Chun collapsed, he only said, Contact Yi Qian if you have no other choice. Now that they had no other choice, they needed Uncle Chin's family to come forward and deal with this. Yi Qian, I came to Beijing with Uncle Chun. When we arrived at the train station, Uncle Chun was shot. I'm sorry, I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to take it, so I didn't tell you clearly over the phone. Uncle Chin was shot? Hearing this, Yi Jian's eyes suddenly became sharp and cold. She shot out like an arrow and asked the instructor at the base, why did Uncle Chun come to the capital for business? Who asked Uncle Chin to come here? Uncle Chun is still in surgery, right? Which operating room is he in? So it wasn't an illness. It was murder. Yi Qian, calm down. What you asked is exactly what we want to know. The client's surgery is not over yet. We'll go together later and wait for the client to finish the surgery. Officer Liu, who was taking the statement, said, this is the most suspicious point of this case. Other than the client, no one knows why he came to Beijing. This comrade doesn't know either. He came to Beijing together with the client. He came back to Beijing on leave, and the client came back on leave. As he spoke, he signaled his colleague to pour a glass of water for the female soldier. She was so anxious that she couldn't speak clearly. She drank a glass of water to calm herself down. Yi Qian wasn't so anxious that she needed to drink water to calm herself down. Her tongue was still recovering. The hospital said that it would take at least a month for her to speak normally. It had only been 11 days. Uncle Chun is in surgery now. I can't stand here and talk. I'm sorry, officers. Yi Qian wasn't in the mood to sit here and be questioned by the police. She needed to wait outside the operating room. She said to the instructor at the base, Instructor, cooperate with Officer Liu's questioning first. I'll wait outside the operating room. The police officer who poured the water placed the glass in front of Yi Qian and said softly, "He's still in surgery. We need to understand the situation while he's in surgery. I also need your cooperation. I want to ask if the person involved has contacted you recently." Yi Qian took the glass of water from him and thanked him. She did not drink it, but placed it on the table. Since she could not speak quickly, she could only make use of the time to speak. "The last time I spoke to Uncle Chun was on the eve of New Year's Eve. I was assigned to a basic unit in the Nongguang military district, so I didn't come back to spend New Year's with Uncle Chun. So I called Uncle Chun. On the morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year, I called Uncle Chun again. After that, I couldn't talk to him because I had something to do, so I didn't contact Uncle Chun again." "You've spoken to him twice. Did he reveal that he's coming to Beijing? You're the client's only relative. Did you sense that the client was hiding something from you?" Yi Qian answered with certainty. There was nothing out of the ordinary. If Uncle Chun was hiding something from me, I would have sensed it, but there was nothing. At least, there was nothing out of the ordinary in the 2 calls I had with Uncle Chun. If there was anything out of the ordinary with Uncle Chun, it must have happened after he spoke to me. Also, this matter may be beyond the scope of your investigation." After Yi Qian finished speaking, she looked at the instructor at the base and asked, "Instructor, besides me, did you inform anyone else? Where's Uncle Chin's phone? Check if there are any clues in it. If there aren't, we need to investigate the recent records in Uncle Chin's phone. Sorry, I have to go outside the operating room now. Sorry." Chapter 4022. Yi Qian wasn't as calm as she looked. She was so anxious that she just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and wait outside the operating room. In the past, when something happened to Uncle Chun, she could feel it even though she was far away in the mountains. But this time, she didn't feel anything at all. Seeing this, Officer Liu could understand Yi Qian's anxiety. He nodded and said, "Okay, let's go together. Our colleagues are guarding outside the operating room. Don't worry." But in his heart, he remembered Yi Qian's words. "This matter may be beyond the scope of your investigation." Could it be that this female soldier knew something, but it wasn't convenient for her to reveal it to them? Commander-in-Chief Xia, who received the news, had already called the military and issued an urgent order. 4 elite guards from a security company were sent over immediately. The guards who came over weren't ordinary guards. They were the guards who protected important leaders. The 4 of them were already on their way to the hospital. At the same time, Commander-in-Chief Xia arranged for the guards beside him to contact the director of the Eastern District Branch. They had to retrieve all the surveillance footage from the train station and keep the master tapes. When the director of the Eastern District Branch saw that even the military was alerted, he personally made the arrangements and contacted Officer Liu, who was in charge of the case. At this time, Officer Liu and his 2 colleagues were in the elevator. The 3 of them accompanied Yi Qian to the operating room and waited for Uncle Chin's surgery to be over. Officer Liu, who was holding his phone, quietly listened to his director's words. The seriousness in his eyes deepened. Even the military was paying attention to this matter. It seemed that the female soldier was right. This case was indeed beyond the scope of their investigation. So far, the investigation only found out that the person involved, Instructor Chen Dongfeng, was a special instructor at a sniper base. As for his personal information, he didn't have it. Even when he entered the system, he couldn't find any personal information. Although he was a special instructor and had retired, his personal information was specially processed by the military. They couldn't find any. Unable to find any personal information, the military was paying attention to this case. It was beyond their scope of investigation, and the director personally called to remind them. With all these signs, the 3 of them would probably be transferred soon. The sensitive criminal investigators had already sensed that something was amiss. When the 2 policemen guarding outside the operating room saw Officer Liu, they stood up from their seats and called out, "Brother Liu." Their gazes fell on Yi Qian. Uncle Chun had not come out yet, and the surgery was still in progress. They did not know the specific situation, so they had to wait. Yi Qian, who wanted to understand the situation, did not even have a doctor or nurse to ask. He could only wait. The sniper instructor frowned as he looked at the door of the operating theater. He walked a few steps to Yi Qian's side and signaled with his eyes for Yi Qian to go to the side to talk. Officer Liu took a look and narrowed his eyes slightly. He thought that he had understood everything that he needed to know, but now it seemed that this was not the case. When the police and the soldiers fought, they would not be evenly matched. Yi Qian, Instructor Chen's vacation was a last-minute decision. We didn't hear Instructor Chen mention it before. A few days ago, Instructor Chen didn't show up for an entire afternoon. He said that he wasn't feeling well and was resting alone in the dormitory. We sent someone to ask Instructor Chen to go to the infirmary, but he refused. The instructor at the sniper base did not explain these words to Officer Liu, who was investigating the case. The words of Principal Chen's fall immediately alerted him, and he subconsciously concealed these details. Now that Yi Qian was here, he told him everything. When Yi Qian heard the words, "If there is no other choice, inform Yi Qian," he clenched his fists. Before entering Beijing, Uncle Chen probably knew that this trip would be dangerous. The only thing that could make Uncle Chen feel threatened was Uncle Chen's identity. Chapter 4023. The instructor at the sniper base was surnamed Feng. He was from Beijing. He was not a resident instructor at the sniper base, but an instructor from a regiment stationed at the border in North Face Military District. His 8-month training period was over. Because he had not returned home to visit his family for 3 years, he reported to the regiment that he would take a 20-day break before reporting back to the regiment. But he did not expect that Instructor Chen, who had been traveling with him, would be in trouble. Gritting his teeth, Instructor Feng said in a menacing tone, "Yi Qian, this is not a simple matter. Before you came, I already reported this to the base. I don't think the police will be able to investigate this matter." Snipers and police officers had very sharp intuition. This intuition could sometimes make people's hair stand on end, because their intuition was most likely correct. Yi Qian could not help but look up at Instructor Feng, who had a Beijing accent. Uncle Chen's identity was special. Every sniper and instructor at the base knew one thing as soon as they stepped into the base. Once they stepped out of the base, they were not allowed to reveal anything or anyone in the base. Everyone's identity and information were classified as top military secrets. If anyone was found to have leaked any information, they would be dealt with according to military law. The anyone and anything here did not specifically refer to Uncle Chen. The main reason was that they did not want the snipers and instructors who came to learn and know about Uncle Chen's special identity. Now that Instructor Feng said this, Yi Qian looked up with a hint of vigilance in his eyes. Could it be that an instructor at the sniper base had mentioned Uncle Chen's identity to outsiders? Yi Qian asked in a hoarse voice, "Do the instructors and soldiers at the base like to talk about Uncle Chen? Outside the base, do they talk about him in public?" No. No soldier or instructor at the base can mention anything about the base to outsiders. Take me, for example. I want to learn sniping for 8 months. Even my brothers in the regiment only know that I went out to learn. They don't know where I went. We can discuss freely in the base, but once we're out of the base, everything will be classified. Even where we're staying, we can't reveal it. Outside the base, we can't even talk about ourselves, let alone talk about Instructor Chen. We all know how important Instructor Chen is. As the chief instructor of the base, Principal Chen's sniping skills were second to none in the entire base. He was also the sniper king in the hearts of all the snipers in the base. Now that the sniper king in their hearts had appeared, how could Instructor Feng still have the mood to rest? He couldn't wait to throw himself into the investigation and find that bastard together. The sniper king had been ambushed. This matter had to be investigated. He continued, "If the base can't handle it, then hand it over to the provincial military. If the provincial military doesn't handle it, then report it to the higher-ups. We have to get to the bottom of this. Murder or accident must have a result." Instructor Feng's words made Yi Qian heave a sigh of relief. She lowered her eyes slightly again. Her slender hands tightly gripped the aluminum alloy railing by the window. The thin, New scars on the back of her hands were obviously whiter than the rest of her skin. Due to the force exerted, she pulled them tight. It made people worry that if she exerted any more force, these newly healed wounds would tear open. Instructor Feng, thank you for sending Uncle Chun to the hospital in time. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even know if something would have happened to Uncle Chun. Now, at least he's in the hospital for emergency treatment. I'll take care of the rest. You can go home after cooperating with the police investigation. Don't miss your family leave. Chapter 4024. Yi Qian leaned against the window, her face half lit and half dark. All her emotions were also half lit. Instructor Feng, who was talking to her, could feel the deep sadness emanating from the young cadet beside him. He wanted to comfort her, but Instructor Chun had been shot in the chest, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. As his only family member, she had to stand up strong, no matter how sad she was. She couldn't let her sadness delay what really needed to be solved. Fortunately, she was determined and didn't panic like a normal girl. She knew that she had to understand the situation first. I've already canceled the family leave. The base ordered me to stay by Instructor Chen's side. The base leaders are already here to visit. You'll be questioned when they arrive. Yi Qian, you have to control your emotions. Don't let your sadness defeat you. Yes, I know. Don't worry. Instructor Feng, please go and sit for a while. I want to be alone. Yi Qian nodded gently, then slowly arched her back slightly. Her face was completely hidden in the shadows, and all the expressions on her face were deeply hidden. At this moment, Yi Qian arched her back to reveal the curve of her unbending back. She had a heart-wrenching fragility, but also a heart-wrenching stubbornness. As Instructor Feng walked away, he turned back to look at the female soldier's thin back. Only then did he realize that she was only wearing a summer coat. Seeing this, Instructor Feng couldn't help but sigh softly. When she received the call, she must have been very anxious. She must have been so anxious that she didn't bring a coat to protect herself from a cold. The temperature outside of Jing City was only a few degrees below zero. Wasn't she cold while waiting for the bus at the airport? Fortunately, there was heating in the room. Otherwise, her anxious and sad body wouldn't be able to take it. Instructor Feng sighed and looked away. He turned his head and met Officer Lu's eyes. He didn't move an inch and nodded at him. He had no intention of talking to him. Brother Lu, he's still hiding something from us. If they don't cooperate, it'll be difficult for us to investigate. The relatively young criminal police officer, Yin Qi, said in a low voice, "They're not cooperating, and the bureau chief wants us to hurry up with the investigation." Officer Lu raised his hand, indicating that Yin Qi didn't need to say more. He started working as a criminal investigator at the age of 24, and it had been 15 years since then. He had encountered countless cases of all shapes and sizes, so many that the files filled up a large cabinet. He had encountered all kinds of cases, but he had never encountered a case as difficult as today's. He clearly knew where to start the investigation, but so far, the two people around the person involved were guarding against him. Guard against him. Officer Lu felt that a few more strands of his white hair had turned white. I'll talk to the chief. You guys stay here and guard him. Also, he looked at the young girl who was sitting alone quietly. She didn't want anyone to see her sadness. This girl was too sensible. When something happened, she shouldered it alone and didn't want anyone to see it. Her daughter, who was in her 3rd year of high school, had her finger cut by an A4 knife. She hugged her mother and whined for a long time. Officer Lu also sighed. Parents were anxious when their children were immature, but parents were also worried when their children were too mature and independent. This girl is probably crying. Yi Qian, who had her eyes closed, didn't cry. She had shed too many tears during this period of time. She had experienced too many things. She had seen her lover's chest get stabbed by his comrade with a dagger. The tearing pain at that moment crushed her organs. Even now, she knew that he was out of danger, but every time she recalled that moment, her heart would still bleed. Chapter 4025. She had not completely recovered from the previous pain, but Uncle Chun had been shot. The surgery had been going on for 8 hours, and it was still not over. She did not know how to cry. In less than half a month, her life had been full of ups and downs. She had experienced the uncertainty of whether her lover was dead or alive. She had experienced the uncertainty of whether her family was dead or alive. She had gripped the aluminum railing so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She just did not let anyone see her cry or panic. She buried everything deep in her heart and used her strongest side to face all the difficulties. Uncle Chun, who had accompanied her as she grew up and encouraged her to face difficulties, would be fine. She had to wait until Uncle Chin's surgery was over and he came out safely. She pressed her chest and felt her heartbeat. Here, her heart was not dead. It was still beating. It was still telling her that no difficulties would defeat her. She was not dead. She was still alive. She was still alive and facing all the difficulties that could not defeat her. Everyone thought that she was a very strong girl. She faced everything calmly and dealt with it calmly without showing a trace of panic. Who would have thought that? When this strong girl found out that Principal Chun had been shot, she, who had just walked out of her trauma, was instantly devastated. She was in great pain twice. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. It was not just pain anymore. She was strong and did not fall because she knew that she could not fall. If she fell, she would not be able to wait for her lover to come back. If she fell, she would not know who shot Principal Chun. If she fell, her grandfather and father, who had finally reunited with each other, would be sad. If she fell, her friends and comrades who loved and cared about her would be sad. After being reborn, she was no longer the same person in her previous life. No one would care about her, be sad, or even take a look at her. She was Yi Qian, who had been alone for a lifetime. She now had a lover, family, comrades, friends, and a career that she liked. Therefore, she cannot fall. Even if her heart was dead, as long as there was still a spark, she would rely on herself to blow this spark into a great fire that could set the prairie ablaze. She would overcome every difficulty and be reborn from the ashes once again. Yi Qian, you cannot fall. You must persevere. Yi Qian bit her lower lip as she held onto the railing with one hand and pressed the other to her chest. Just like that, she did not tell anyone about her pain. Even though the dark swamp was about to swallow her whole, she relied on herself to walk out of it step by step and come back to life. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Qian finally let go of the hand that had been pressed against her chest. She let go of the handrail and slowly wiped away the handprint that had been left on the clean and shiny handrail. When the handprint could no longer be seen, she finally let go of her tightly clenched lower lip. It seemed to have wiped away the panic in her heart. Yi Qian lowered his head and looked at the reflection of the aluminum alloy railing. His face was a little distorted, and he let out a long sigh. Uncle Chun, you promised Grandpa Jin that you would help Grandpa Jin see me climb higher and higher on the military path. You promised Grandpa Jin, you can't go back on your words. You must keep your word. You taught me before. You won't forget, right? Yi Qian straightened her back and stood in front of the window. She looked out of the window with an indestructible determination. Officer Liu, who had just returned from his call, was slightly stunned. The girl who had been so weak that it seemed like her spine was about to break, but still stubbornly arched her back now, did not look weak at all. Her aura was so strong that it was like a cold sword that had been unsheathed from its scabbard. She wanted to use the sharpest edge to cut through the darkness that trapped her. Chapter 4026. This girl was probably not simple. The person who was shot was not simple either. The soldier who hid their investigation was not simple either. Just as the chief said, they probably had to avoid arousing suspicion in this case. Officer Liu walked back and sat down. He thought to himself that he should remind Yi Qian to wear a coat later. The heating in the hospital was sufficient, but it was cold outside. Qin Xiu had already noticed that Yi Qian did not bring a coat with him. He accompanied Mrs. Qin to the doctor and received the same diagnosis of nervous headache as before. There were no changes. Even the doctor's advice was exactly the same. Don't get angry, stay calm, rest, and worry less. Mrs. Qin sighed as she walked toward the garage. It seems like there's no way to treat it. I'll discuss it with your father later. I'll go abroad and live for a while. It's just that the procedures are a bit troublesome. I have to apply, investigate, and ask questions. I'll leave this to you. Ouch, my head. Mrs. Cheen thought about how she had to go through all kinds of procedures before going abroad for treatment because of her identity. She thought about it for a while, and her head hurt again. Cheen Shio saw this and stopped to massage Mrs. Cheen's temples. He said gently, "Leave this to Dad. He's been abroad alone for so many years, and you're in the country. It'll be good for you to go over and accompany him. You could take the car back first. I'll come back later." The chauffeur had already driven over. Mrs. Cheen wanted to ask her son what was going on, but the chauffeur had already gotten out of the car and quickly opened the door. Cheen Shio took the opportunity to help Mrs. Cheen, who was about to ask a lot of questions, into the car. He held the car door with one hand and bent his tall and slender body. He leaned forward and said to Mrs. Cheen, "I might go directly to Dangue Garden to accompany Grandpa tonight. Don't wait for me to come back. Also, cancel the gatherings tomorrow and rest at home." After he finished speaking, he closed the car door. Mrs. Cheen sighed a few times in the car. When she saw Cheen Shio acting as if he did not hear her, she was so angry that her head hurt again. The chauffeur quickly drove away. Cheen Shio's thin lips, which had been tightly pursed, relaxed a little. He turned around and looked around. His footsteps paused for a moment as he thought about where he had just walked out from. Only then did he take a step forward. He had no sense of direction, but after nearly 3 years of treatment, he had made great improvements. He memorized it with his heart, like drawing a picture, and listened to the doctor's advice to not always rely on the people around him. Now, he could finally walk around like a normal person. When they reached the first floor, Cheen Shio called his driver. After a while, the driver, who was carrying a luxury handbag, quickly walked over and handed the handbag to Cheen Shio. "According to your height and body shape, the shop staff recommended this coat to me. See if you like it." Cheen Shio took the bag and glanced at it. Then he nodded slightly. He didn't know if it was okay or not. He would send it to her first. If she didn't like it, then he would think about it. Cheen Shio appeared in front of Yi Qian with the bag. Yi Qian's brows furrowed slightly. When she heard Cheen Shio call her just now, she almost thought that it was an auditory hallucination. When she looked up and saw Cheen Shio standing not far in front of her, she realized that it was not an auditory hallucination. She did not understand why Cheen Shio came to look for her. He even handed her a bag with a coat in it. "Put it on. Since you're in a hurry, you have to take care of your body," Cheen Shio said so gently, as if he was talking to an ordinary friend. There was a hint of concern in his casual tone. Chapter 4027. Yi Jian looked down slightly and saw the bag that Cheen Shio handed over. His brows furrowed from a slight frown to a frown that could be seen clearly. She didn't reach out her hand. She looked up at Cheen Shio with her clear eyes and said politely, "It's okay. I'm not cold. Thank you." Cheen Shio's slender hands clenched the 2 thin ribbons of the handbag. He also looked at Yi Jian with a calm gaze. After a while, a helpless smile appeared on his elegant and handsome face. "Yi Jian, you don't have to be so wary of me. When I was young, I ate and drank for free at Grandpa Fu's house. Grandpa Fu often bought me toys. Grandpa Fu took care of me so much. Now, I'm just repaying him. You don't have to think that I have bad intentions. You misunderstood. I didn't mean that. It was my grandpa who took care of you. It had nothing to do with me. Grandpa also told me that you often went to the hospital to take care of him when he was sick. So, you don't have to take care of me. Thank you." With that, Yi Qian bowed sincerely to express her gratitude to Cheen Shio. She was indeed sincerely thanking him. Before she returned to the Fu family, Grandpa Fu had been seriously ill. He had to be resuscitated 3 times. The first 2 times, Big Brother was by Grandpa Fu's side. The 3rd time, Big Brother returned to the army. It was all thanks to Cheen Shio that Grandpa Fu survived the 3rd time. When she returned to the Fu family, Grandpa Fu had been discharged from the hospital for less than 2 months. This was the thank you she owed Cheen Shio. It was a long overdue thank you. Qin Xiu didn't need such an apology. He just didn't want to see her sick. He just wanted to express his concern. But obviously, Yi Qian didn't need it. Or perhaps it was understandable. If possible, she didn't even want him to appear in front of her. Qin Xiu was a little angry, but his self-restraint didn't show on his face. He took back the bag that she hadn't taken back after a long time and put it down naturally. He asked her, "It's better to avoid suspicion, right? Do you really want to avoid suspicion to this extent? Even the most ordinary concern, even if it's just a friendship?" "Yes, you can't." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Qian immediately replied. He didn't even have time to think. He replied directly and firmly. "Ambassador Qin, I am very grateful for your concern, and thank you for treating me as a friend. But I'm sorry, I can't accept your concern. Because I can't accept the concern of a grown man who is clearly interested in me. I've already rejected him, so I can't be ambiguous. Rejecting means that I have to reject your concern and good intentions. I can't reject your kindness and accept your care and gift with a clear conscience under the banner of you and me being friends. I'm sorry, but I think it's immoral and irresponsible." Qin Xiu was stunned by her words. He was very angry in his heart, but he couldn't really get angry. Accepting the care and gifts of a boy who confessed to her was both immoral and irresponsible. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. This was the first time he had heard of it, and also the first time he had learned of it. Was that really the case? Did he misunderstand, or did she misunderstand? Yi Qian rejected him and didn't intend to continue the conversation with Qin Xiu. Her man had risked his life to set up a trap for her so that he could come back to see her as soon as possible. He was still lying in the hospital, but she accepted the concern of a man who was interested in her. This was an immoral act. Chapter 40:28. That was what Yi Qian thought, and she was very stubborn about it. If anyone had advised her that it was rude, she would have said it directly. Being irresponsible and immoral was the principle that Grandpa Jin and Uncle Chun had taught her. As a person, she must have her own principles. If she violated them, she would resist and never hesitate. "I'm sorry, I still have things to do here. Ambassador Qin is also a busy person. Please go back. Thank you again for your concern." Yi Qian bowed slightly, turned around, and prepared to leave without hesitation. Yi Qian, wait. Qin Xiu reacted quickly. He frowned and looked in front of him, then looked around. His voice was so low that only the two of them could hear. He asked in a low voice, "Who's in the surgery?" "I saw Grandpa Fu when I went back to Dingue Garden the day before yesterday. He's very healthy." "It's not Grandpa. It's my family in Nan Province." Yi Qian didn't refuse to answer this, but she didn't want to go into detail. "The surgery is still in progress. I need to go over. Goodbye. You have to take good care of yourself to have the energy to take care of your family. Your clothes are thin, and it's cold outside. Try not to go out. Also, if you need anything, you can contact me." "Okay, thank you." Yi Qian nodded and went back to stand outside the surgery room. She didn't pay much attention to whether Qin Xiu left immediately. Qin Xiu's hand that was gently holding the bag was clenched so tightly that he was about to break the two thin ribbons of the bag. His elegant and handsome face was a little tense, but deep in his heart, there was more helplessness. He knew that the girl he liked was ruthless, and he had seen how ruthless she could be. But this time, her ruthlessness was like a double-edged sword stabbing into his heart. He couldn't let it go, and he couldn't help but hate it. In his nearly 30 years of life, this was the first time he felt so frustrated. She directly rejected someone she didn't like, just like how he rejected the girl who liked him. She didn't give him any hope or face. Fine, when he rejected other girls, he didn't think it was wrong at all. He also didn't think he was ruthless or heartless. Now that it was his turn to be rejected by the girl he loved, he finally knew how cruel and heartless he could be. Looking at the straight figure that never looked at him, Qin Xiu, who had been standing there for a long time, finally took his first step. Perhaps he had been standing there for a long time, so his slender legs were still a little stiff. After a few steps, he regained his usual elegance and calmness. Qin Xiu turned around and walked towards the elevator when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He saw Mother Qin, who had clearly asked the chauffeur to drive her home, standing there with an angry look on her face. Qin Xiu's brows tightened, and his handsome face also showed anger. "Mom, are you following me? You don't know that girl." "Qin Xiu, when did you learn to lie to me?" Mrs. Qin was furious, but she was still able to control herself. She asked sternly, "You even lied to your mother for a woman of unknown status?" Mrs. Qin was a strong-willed person. She wouldn't allow her children to lie to her at all. This was also the reason why she could still become friends with Mrs. Li. Both of them were strong-willed, so naturally, they had a lot in common. With a common language, how could they not become friends? "Mom, you're following me." Qin Xiu didn't answer directly. He was also quite angry now, and his anger was getting worse. He was angry, but he didn't fly into a rage. Instead, his face turned colder and colder, so cold that there was no emotion in his eyes at all. It was as if a pile of ice had melted into his eyes, cold and heavy. Mrs. Qin's heart couldn't help but tighten. "I didn't know you had such a hobby." His voice was also very cold. Chapter 4029. Mrs. Qin's heart tightened. This was the first time she had seen her son, who had always been elegant and refined, show such a cold side to her. Although she was a little flustered, her strong personality did not make her take a step back because of panic. Hearing this, she laughed coldly, and her gaze became even sharper. "Mom was just concerned about you, but I didn't expect you to lie to me." At this moment, Qin Xiu felt extremely tired. He said in a very calm voice, "Mom, you've already forced my sister to leave. Now, it's your turn to force me to leave? Okay, I'll do as you wish. I'll disappear from your sight within a week. This way, you won't have to worry about me and my sister anymore. You won't have to be angry because of us, and you won't have to have frequent headaches. Mom, you'll have a better and happier life if you force your two unfilial sons and daughters away." Qin Jiai's calm voice spoke words that would definitely cause one's heart to feel uneasy. Mother Qin panicked, but she also became angrier. If they were not in the hospital, Mrs. Qin would have scolded him angrily. She was obviously furious, but she still had to suppress her trembling body in order to maintain her elegant image. "Qin Xiu, what's with your attitude?" "My attitude is to tell you, Mom, that you don't have to worry about me anymore. It's too late. You should go back early. I still have something to deal with." Something to deal with? Was he thinking of buying another expensive dress for that woman? "Qin Xiu, when did you become a man who only cares about appearances and not inner qualities? You've disappointed me so much." Qin Xiu's expression was originally calm, but when he heard his mother's words, his handsome face, which was so elegant that it looked like it was carved out of a piece of fine white jade, suddenly became fierce. He paused in his steps and turned around, looking at Mother Qin calmly like before. "Mom, you like Madame Li's daughter very much. You think she's virtuous and capable and can run the family well, right? Mom, why don't you ask Mrs. Li's daughter's friends and ask Miss Du if she's virtuous and capable? They're just a bunch of little girls. Little girls are narrow-minded and don't know what to say. What's there to ask? Madame Li has 2 sons and 2 daughters, all of whom are promising. Naturally, her character is excellent." Qin Xiu didn't want to listen anymore. He chuckled and said, "Then why don't you adopt a son and marry such a good Miss Du into the Qin family?" Pain and helplessness coexisted in that smile. He finally understood why his biological sister hadn't returned home for so many years. She didn't even want to talk to Mother Qin over the phone. He finally understood that it was time for him to escape. "Mom, I've let you down, and you've also made me very tired. Goodbye, Mom." Qin Xiu smiled. It was a very, very tired smile. Seeing that Mrs. Qin was dumbfounded, he turned around and left. Qin Xiu, stop right there." Mrs. Qin, who was completely flustered, tried to order Qin Xiu to stop in his tracks. However, only Qin Xiu answered her. He didn't even look back as he walked away tiredly. Yiqian didn't know when Qin Xiu had left, Suddenly, a frustrated and anxious shout came from the quiet operating floor. Although it was some distance away, it was very clear. She didn't pay attention to why someone would angrily shout at Qin Xiu to stop. She was still waiting for the operation to end. Another hour had passed. It had been 9 hours, and there was still no movement. How long did she have to wait? Before the operation ended, for guard from Commander-in-Chief Xia arrived. Chapter 40:30. The guard were all in plain clothes. When the four of them walked out at the same time, a murderous aura hit them in the face. Officer Liu and his colleagues couldn't help but stand up in unison. The four guards' gazes were like X-rays, coldly sweeping across the faces in front of them. In the end, they nodded slightly at Officer Liu, the oldest of the group, and then walked to Yi Qian's side. They stood in front of Yi Qian in plain clothes and said, "Hello, Yi Qian. Our superiors have ordered us to stand guard. You can order us to do anything at any time." Their voices were so cold that it made people feel safe. Every word was sonorous and powerful. It was obvious that they were not ordinary guards. Just a few short sentences showed that they were disciplined and had extraordinary strength. Officer Liu's colleagues looked at the four soldiers in civilian clothes who were standing in front of them with an imposing aura. After they looked at each other, they looked away. With such a strong aura, even if they were in plain clothes, they could tell that they were soldiers. A retired soldier who had been specially hired back to the army had alarmed the military and even specially sent guards. The two younger police officers, Yin Qi and Ji Jie, instantly thought that they had bad eyes and didn't see the true identity of the person involved. Could it be a high-ranking military official? Yi Qian was very grateful for their arrival. With them guarding her, she did feel a little more at ease. Moreover, if this matter was really exposed because of Uncle Chen's identity, then the police investigating this matter would be very likely to be in danger. Innocent police officers could not be involved. She asked, "Do the higher-ups have any other arrangements? Will they let us handle it ourselves?" "Let us handle it ourselves. The police are only responsible for the preliminary investigation and the investigation of suspicious people in the train station square. The higher-ups have already reported this matter to the higher-ups. The Commander-in-Chief wants us to tell you that Principal Chun has the military behind him. Please don't worry. Don't worry and wait for Principal Chen's surgery to be over. Leave everything else to the higher-ups." Yi Qian was about to speak when the lights in the operating theater suddenly turned from red to green. They needed to swipe a card to enter the operating theater. The first layer of protection automatically opened, and a doctor wearing a light green surgical gown, a sterile cap, and a surgical mask walked out. The police officers who had been looking at the four guards all turned around. Yi Qian rushed over and asked, "Doctor, how was my uncle?" There was no need to ask who the family member was. The doctor took off his mask and looked at the young female soldier who looked anxious but hopeful because he had come out. He sighed softly and said, "I'm sorry. We did our best. The patient is still slightly conscious. You should go in and take a look." As he spoke, he bowed deeply to Yi Qian. "I'm sorry. We did our best." It was just a short sentence, but each word was like a sudden clap of thunder. Yi Qian's strong and slender body shook violently. "Sorry, we tried our best." Yi Qian grabbed the doctor's hand tightly and forcefully. He asked the doctor very softly, "Doctor, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Why are you apologizing? Why? Where's Uncle Chun? The surgery still needs to be carried out, right? Then please go in quickly. I won't delay you any longer. I can wait. I can wait a little longer. Please go in quickly. I really can wait." The doctor had seen too many situations like this. He gently patted Yi Qian's hand on his arm and sighed. "Go in quickly, child. The patient is still holding on. You should take one last look at him." It was cruel, but it was an unchangeable fact. Chapter 40:31. Everyone knew what the doctor meant. Yi Qian, she also knew, but she didn't want to accept it. How could she accept it? Uncle Chun had accompanied her as she grew up, helped her through the darkest times after her rebirth, educated her, and guided her in the right direction in life. He was her teacher, friend, and father. He wasn't just anyone. He wasn't just anyone. He was her family. He was her Uncle Chun. No matter where she went, she would think about him. She wanted to be filial to him in the future. That wasn't anyone else. That was Uncle Chun, who had given her fatherly love like a mountain in the most painful and unbearable darkness. Although she had never called him dad, in her heart, Uncle Chun had long been her father. He was her biological father, just like Father Fu. However, now she was going to lose him. She dragged her heavy feet. Every step she took felt like 1,000 pounds. After taking the first step, she didn't want to take the second step. She was afraid that if she took another step, her family, Uncle Chun, whom she respected the most like a father, would be one step further away from her. One step, two steps. Every step was dripping blood. Her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. Her lips were pale. The 4 guards who accompanied her couldn't help but worry about her pale complexion. Instructor Fong called the leader of the base, who was rushing to the hospital. The leader was still a short distance away from the hospital. He was accompanied by the leader of the Southern Province Military Region, as well as Principal Chin's old friend, Political Commissar Yin, who had helped Yi Qian a lot. What? You can't make it? When the leader of the base heard this, his expression changed drastically. He said to the driver, "Faster, faster." Political Commissar Yan's heart sank to the bottom. "You can't make it. Old Chun, you can't make it. Old Chun, you're too much. Why can't you make it? You're a world-class sniper who came back from the battlefield, from a pile of corpses, and stepped on the enemy's corpses. Why can't you make it? Why can't you make it?" The taxi driver gritted his teeth and stepped on the accelerator. Fortunately, it was almost 10 o'clock in the evening and the rush hour had passed. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to speed up even if he wanted to. Old Chun won't last much longer. We have to see him one last time and hear if he has anything else to say. The leader of the base turned pale. He clenched his fists and said to Political Commissar Yin, "Fortunately, Xiao Yi has arrived at the hospital. Otherwise, Old Chun wouldn't have been able to see the person he missed the most." Political Commissar Yin pursed his lips with a serious expression. After a long while, he lowered his head and said, "Once Uncle Chun leaves, Xiao Yi will suffer the most. That child has been by Old Chun's side for the longest time." Back then, Old Chun promised an old comrade that he would accompany Xiao Yi as he grew up. He wanted to see Xiao Yi enter the military camp with his own eyes and see Xiao Yi find a lifetime of happiness. This guy. His voice was getting lower and lower. By the time he finished speaking, Political Commissar Yin was already choking with sobs. This guy has always been a man of his word. Why did he break his promise? I have to find him and get even with him. I have to find him and get even with him. Back then, Principal Chun had secretly retired and came to Fujian Town Middle School to become the principal. There were very few people who knew his true identity. Platoon Leader Liu and Political Commissar Yin, who had been assigned to the Fujian Town Middle School, were the ones who knew. Political Commissar Yin couldn't accept the fact that his old friend who had worked with him for many years had been shot and couldn't make it. Even he couldn't accept it, let alone Yi Qian. Chapter 4032. At this moment, Political Commissar Yin was worried about Yi Qian, whom he hadn't seen for almost 3 years. Yi Qian had already seen Principal Chun, who was covered in tubes. She saw Principal Chun lying motionlessly on the operating table. The white light from the ceiling shone on Principal Chun's face, making it seem as if his life was slowly fading away. Yi Qian, who was standing at the door of the operating room, didn't move. She stood there in a daze, and even her gaze was fixed on the operating table. They were so close, but she didn't have the strength to take another step forward. If she took this step forward, she would be separated from Uncle Chun, who was like a father to her. She couldn't take another step. She couldn't take another step forward. Principal Chun, who knew that he didn't have much time left, seemed to sense the child he missed the most. She was standing at a place where he couldn't see her. Principal Chun let out a heavy sigh. He wanted to raise his hand and wave at the child he missed the most, but he didn't have the strength. He could only flick his fingers lightly, but he didn't have the strength to raise his hand. "This child, what should I do?" What should I do if I leave her here alone? After making the call, Instructor Phone rushed into the operating room. When he saw that Yi Qian still hadn't entered the operating room, his hand trembled. The phone he was still holding in his hand slipped and fell to the ground with a thud. The sound of the phone falling wasn't actually loud, but in such a quiet environment where the air was stifling, the sound was loud. Yi Qian, who was clenching her fingers, finally reacted. What was she standing there for? She had to talk to Uncle Chun. She had to tell Uncle Chun that he had to live well. He had promised Grandpa Jin, so he couldn't go back on his words. She rushed into the operating room and rushed to the side of the operating room. Yi Qian saw that Principal Chun was struggling to even raise his eyes. She saw her hands were groping and grabbing wildly. They were trembling very much. There was no pattern to it at all. No one knew what she was trying to grab. The guard who came in next silently held Principal Chen's hand. Then, he held Yi Qian's hand. The old man and the young man finally held hands. Yi Qian, who was kneeling on the operating table, started to cry. It wasn't a loud wail that could be vented all at once. Her emotions were like a river, but there was only a narrow path leading to it. She couldn't explode in an instant, but it made people feel sad because of her sadness. Uncle Chun, I'm Yi Qian. I'm Yi Qian. I'm here. Yi Qian is here. Please look at me. Please talk to me. Yi Qian, whose tears were falling like rain, spoke softly. She was like Principal Chun, who was so worried that he was about to fall asleep. Her voice was so soft, yet so desolate. Principal Chun had reached a point where it was difficult for him to even speak. He wanted to speak. He wanted to say a lot of things. He wanted to tell the child he was worried about not to be too sad. Everyone had to go through this once in their lives, and now it was his turn to go through this. However, the person he was most worried about was Yi Qian. But what made him happy was that this poor girl had finally found a home that truly belonged to her. She had a grandfather, a father who loved her, and Xia Jinyuan who cared about her. With so many people who loved her, he could finally leave in peace. Yi, girl. Principal Chen's voice was so weak that it was almost inaudible. No matter how many words he wanted to say, they were all stuck in his heart. He couldn't say them one by one. He could only try his best to say them. Chapter 4033. Principal Chen blinked his heavy eyelids lightly. His breathing was very, very light. Even his chest was barely moving up and down. Don't cry. Take care of yourself. Don't cry. My matters are dangerous. Don't. Meddle. Don't. Come out. Definitely. Don't. Come out. Principal Chun used all his strength to clearly state his most important last words. His breathing was already so weak that it seemed like it would break at any moment if the slightest breeze blew it away. As for his matters, she couldn't meddle. She couldn't even show her face. He had been holding it in all this time. He wanted to hold it in until he could see the Yi girl he had raised as his own daughter before he died. Now that he had seen her, he was already very satisfied. In this life, his parents had died when he was young. Later on, he had wandered from place to place until he joined the military to serve his country. After he retired, he went from having no one to rely on to having a daughter. He raised her, taught her, and watched her grow day by day. She became stronger and stronger every day. Then, he was specially groomed by the military to become an outstanding sniper and special forces soldier. Now, he had been admitted to military school. In another year, he would have to go to the military. The child he had raised had grown up. He could finally let go. Before he completely let go, he wanted her to promise him one thing. Otherwise, even after he died, he would be a sinner. Principal Chun, who still had a breath stuck in his throat, couldn't even hear Yi Qian sobbing. He still wanted to hold Yi Qian's hand and remind her, but his whole body couldn't muster up any strength. His life had really entered the countdown. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid that the stubborn girl would investigate and meddle in his affairs. Promise? Uncle Chun, don't meddle. Take care of yourself. Don't let Uncle Chun worry. Promise, promise. Uncle Chun. Yi Qian knew what Principal Chun wanted her to promise, but she didn't want to. She didn't want to promise at all. But now, she had to promise. She had never disappointed Uncle Chin before. Now, she couldn't disappoint Uncle Chin even more. I promise, but you can't go back on your words. You have to promise me that you'll get through this. Uncle Chun, little Yi is begging you. You have to get through this too. She wiped her face carelessly. She wanted to wipe away her tears so that Principal Chun could see that she wasn't crying. However, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't wipe them away. After wiping them away, they would appear again. The more she wiped, the more tears there seemed to be. Principal Chin's face was getting paler and paler. Even the light in his eyes was getting dimmer and dimmer. Yi Qian was panicking and scared. She could feel that the hand she was holding, which used to be so strong, was getting colder and colder. No, she didn't want to. Yi Qian had said that he would not cry, but his tears kept flowing. He knelt beside the operating table as if he was kneeling in the abyss of despair. If he moved any further, he would be smashed to pieces. Uncle Chun, the doctor still has to perform surgery on you. You have to hang in there and don't sleep, okay? You told me before that there's nothing that a person can't get through in life. Just grit your teeth and push through, and it'll be over. Just grit your teeth and push through, and you'll be fine. Don't sleep. Please don't sleep, okay? Little Yi, I'm begging you. I'm begging you. You promised Grandpa Jin that you would accompany me as I grow up. You promised to send me into the army on Grandpa Jin's behalf. Uncle Chun, you promised Grandpa General you can't go back on your words. Little Yi, I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Her cries weren't loud, but they sounded like a cuckoo crying blood. The sadness in the entire operating room was so strong that it could lock people's throats and suffocate them. Her eyes were red because of her crying, and her heart was trembling because of her pleading. Chapter 4034. Even the 4 unyielding guards sent by the security company had their mouths tightly pressed together. Their eyes were bloodshot as they stood on both sides of the operating table. Listening to her pleas, Principal Chin's tears slowly flowed out of the corners of his eyes. When the bullet hit his chest, he knew that he couldn't make it. That was why he said, "Inform Yi Qian as a last resort." He had endured until now. It had been very difficult for him. Look, his former comrades had all come to reunite with him. Those faded black and white photos of his comrades were all here. They passed through the world of black and white, wearing the same military uniforms as when he first met them. They stood among the mountains and rivers with guns on their shoulders. They all looked at him so vividly and then walked towards him. "Chen Dongfeng, you're amazing. You've become the king of snipers." "Chen Dongfeng, wait for us to retire." "You can't retire. You have to train more snipers for our country." "Chen Dongfeng, you're finally here." "Brothers, we've been waiting for you for a long time." "Chen Dongfeng, the mountains and rivers are still here. We're lucky that we didn't disappoint you." "Chen Dongfeng, Chen Dongfeng, Chen Dongfeng." Look, they were all his comrades. They were all his comrades. Baldy from northern Shaanxi, Donkey Hooves from Shaanxi, Big Mouth from southern province, and Teacher Guan, who was the most educated among them and could speak good English. They're all here. They're all here. He could go now. His comrades had waited for him for so long that even the bones under the mountains had turned to ashes. He could finally reunite with them. Go, really go. He was going to reunite with his comrades. His brothers hadn't seen each other for decades. This time, they could chat and laugh loudly again. Principal Chin's lusterless lips trembled. He used the last of his strength and held Yi Qian's hand tightly. "You've grown up to see you again. Chen Dongfeng, we should go. Hurry up and catch up. Don't get lost again." "Ha ha ha, I won't get lost. I won't get lost. Go. Let's go. The flames of war in the south have been burning for 10 years. This head must be hung at the gate of the country. After death, you've worked hard. Good news flew in as paper money. Ha ha ha. Good news flew in as paper money. Good news flew in as paper money." Headmaster Chun smiled as the voices of his comrades echoed in his ears. He slowly closed his eyes as a deep smile appeared on his face. "Little Yi, remember to go to Uncle Chin's grave next year and pass on the good news as paper money." Remember to pass on the good news as paper money. Headmaster Chen caught up with his comrade. He was wearing his old military uniform and carrying a Type 59 rifle. He and his comrade walked into the mountains and rivers of the motherland. They were finally reunited and would never be separated again. The green mountains and clear waters faded, and the lively faces were once again fixed into black and white photos. The hero had left, but the heroic spirit stayed. The mountains and rivers were still there, and the country was prosperous, and the people were at peace. The 4 guards saluted the hero who had closed his eyes. "Farewell, hero. Take care." Yi Qian was on the verge of breaking down. He kept rubbing Principal Chen's warm hands. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "Uncle Chun, don't sleep. Uncle Chun, don't sleep. Don't sleep. Lassie, I beg you, please open your eyes. Open your eyes and look at Lil Yi, please. I beg you, don't sleep. Don't sleep. Doctor, 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 come quickly. Doctor, come quickly. Save my Uncle Chun. I beg you. Save my Uncle Chun." His sorrowful voice broke the hearts of those who heard it. Gone. Another hero had left. Chapter 40-35. Yi Qian, who couldn't accept the truth, was once again faced with the separation of life and death. She had already faced it countless times, from the time when Uncle Jin passed away to the time when an armed police soldier sacrificed himself to clear out the fugitives. Then there was the time when she was on the overseas rescue mission, which was when Father Fu's father was kidnapped. That guard was locked in a small wooden box and saw the other guard sacrifice himself. The sacrifice of a J5 made Yi Qian feel even closer to death. At that time, she clearly felt that as a soldier, the greater the responsibility, the greater the danger. It took her a long time to adjust to the loss of the J5. This was because Xia Jinyuan had once told Yi Qian, "When faced with cruel things, you can only face them, and you must face them seriously. If one day I die or you die, the best sacrifice for the martyrs will be to shoot the first evil with the gun in your hand." It was this sentence that made her endure and made her treat every training more harshly. She thought that this would be enough. She thought that this would be enough. In the end, it wasn't. It wasn't like this. There were too many invisible evils and dangers. She didn't know when they would happen to her, the people she was familiar with, or even her family. She thought that as long as she worked hard enough, she would be able to fight against the dangers and avoid them. In fact, that wasn't the case. She couldn't choose to wait and avoid the invisible evils and dangers just because she couldn't see them. She should take the initiative to attack and completely eradicate the evils and dangers before they came. If she took the initiative to attack, Uncle Chin wouldn't have fallen and left her. He wouldn't have been lying on the cold operating table like he was now, with all kinds of tubes all over his body, and Uncle Chun, who was her teacher, friend, and father, taken away by the Grim Reaper. She should have taken the initiative to attack. How could she let danger stay by Uncle Chen's side? That was a ticking time bomb. When it didn't explode, nothing would happen. When it did, she would lose Uncle Chun. "I'm sorry, Uncle Chun. I can't promise you that I won't investigate. I can't promise you that I won't ignore it." She wanted to investigate to the end and directly find out who the murderer was. It wasn't just one murderer. There was only one murderer, and there was definitely more than one person who planned the whole thing. "Uncle Chun, I'm sorry. I can't promise you that. Why don't you wake up and talk to little girl Yi again? You just have to live well, and little Yi won't care, okay? Uncle Chun, open your eyes and look at little girl Yi. I'm already in my 3rd year, and I'll be in my 4th year soon. I'll be joining the army soon, and you'll be able to send me there soon. Have you forgotten what you promised Grandpa Jen? How could you forget? How could you forget?" Yes is Yi. S is Yi was C. NC. STSS. ETTs. S is T's. Ants. This guy, he's really gone. The leader of the sniper base and the leader of Nan Province's military district walked into the operating room. They saw Principal Chun, who had already left, and Yi Qian, who was kneeling beside Principal Chun. The two of them walked in and looked at the soldiers who were loyal to their country with solemn and sorrowful eyes. At that moment, their hands were so heavy that they couldn't even lift them to salute. Chapter 4036. Pull her up, the leader of the provincial military base said softly as he gestured for the guards standing beside Yi Qian to help her up. Old Chun had already left, and he would never come back. There was no way to pull Yi Qian up. When the first guard tried to pull her up, he did not guard against her. He did not even think that he would be sent flying by a female soldier, but he was really sent flying by her shoulder. When the second guard tried to pull her up, he was stopped by the coldness in her eyes. He slowly retracted his hand and looked at the leader of the provincial military base. It would be too cruel to pull her away at this time. When the leader of the provincial military base saw this, he could not help but close his eyes. Old Chun, you left so cleanly. Look at the child beside you. You left her all alone. Why didn't you get over it? The leader of the military base had seen Yi Qian before. When he saw that Yi Qian did not allow anyone to get close to him, he sighed and said, "Don't pull her up. Let her accompany Old Chun. We will go and arrange the relevant matters. We will come back later. For now, let little Yi and Old Chun have some time alone. They only had a little time to be alone. All right, we will come back later." The leader of the provincial military base bowed deeply to the operating table. The leader of the military base also bowed deeply and turned to leave. Political Commissar Yin, who was standing at the entrance of the operating room, waited for them to leave. He stood there for a long time without moving. His throat moved slightly. He took off his military cap and walked in step by step. It was very cold in the operating room. It was so cold that it penetrated his bones. The sadness in the operating room was too strong. It was so strong that before he reached Old Chen's side, he could no longer hold back his tears. He bowed deeply and did not straighten his back for a long time. When he raised his head again, even the tip of his nose was red. He looked up and forced his tears back again. Then he walked to Yi Qian's side. He raised his hand with difficulty and slowly placed it on Yi Qian's shoulder. He patted her gently. "Girl, accompany your Uncle Chen well. He treated you like a daughter and raised you like a daughter. Before he leaves, he will definitely miss you the most. Keep him company and talk to him for a while. Uncle Yin will come and keep Uncle Chen company later." This place was too cold. Fortunately, Old Chen was not afraid of the cold. It was just that Xiao Yi was kneeling on such a cold ground. She was cold. Taking off his military jacket, Commissar Yin draped it over Yi Qian, which was still warm from his body heat. This child was too adorable, even more so than his own daughter. The heartbroken Yi Qian did not know who had come and who had left. She held Uncle Chen's hand tightly and rubbed it nonstop, as if she wanted to warm Principal Chen's hand even more. That way, her beloved family member would not leave. But to no avail. The warmth in Principal Chen's palms grew fainter and fainter. Even if Yi Qian rubbed her hands until they turned red, she still could not warm Principal Chen's palms, nor could she warm Principal Chen's palms. The loss of life was the change from warmth to coldness. Officer Liu, who was guarding the door, could not bear to watch anymore. "Brother Liu, should we pull her up? It's already been an hour," GS said softly. He really could not bear to watch anymore. She had been kneeling for more than an hour and rubbing her hands for more than an hour. Her voice was hoarse now, but she was still kneeling there. Officer Liu looked inside and sighed. "You two stay here. I'll go outside and ask for instructions." There were several leaders in the army around. If they did not say anything, he could not make the decision. Chapter 4037. Outside, Commander-in-Chief Xiao walked out of the elevator with a cold aura around him. Two guards followed closely behind him. They walked as fast as Commander-in-Chief Xiao walked. Their footsteps were as fast as thunder, and they were so shocked that they exploded. "Commander-in-Chief! Commander-in-Chief!" The soldiers standing in the corridor outside the operating room had already seen the Commander-in-Chief rushing over. They had just saluted him when Commander-in-Chief Xia, whose face was as calm as still water, glanced at them. His dignified eyes suddenly became fierce. He couldn't be saved. He didn't even need to ask. He said it with certainty. Yes, an hour and 11 minutes ago, he passed away. The leader of the Southern Province Military Region replied, he's still in the operating theater. Old Chen's relative, Xiao Yi, is accompanying him. Xiao Yi, Yi Qian. When Commander-in-Chief Xia heard that Yi Qian was accompanying him inside, he was slightly relieved, but at the same time, he was so anxious that his heart burned. Sixth brother had just passed away, and Old Chen had passed away. Xiao Yi, this child was made of iron. No matter how strong her heart was, she couldn't bear it. Is there anyone guarding inside? Commander-in-Chief Xia's voice had also become sharp. He shouted so loudly that Officer Liu, who had already reached the first door of the operating theater, couldn't help but take a step back. His voice was too imposing. It was even more imposing than their bureau chief, and the bureau chief above the bureau chief. Officer Liu took a deep breath and walked out. He happened to hear a military leader answer, "A few policemen from the Eastern District Sub-Bureau are guarding. The few of us came out first to discuss the follow-up. Old Chen has passed away. His funeral needs to be settled. We can't let a hero pass away so quietly. We can't let a hero pass away so quietly." Commander-in-Chief Xia's eyes dimmed. Commander-in-Chief, if something really happens to me one day, don't make a scene for me. Let the soldiers come over. I'll try my best to keep a low profile. I'm not like Uncle General. If something really happens to me, just scatter my ashes into the Yellow River. I have a few comrades who died in the Yellow River. I'm like them. Maybe I can find them when the time comes and keep them company. Old Chen was right. With his identity, he was destined to be a nobody. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked into the operating theater. He saw Yi Qian kneeling on the floor, her head resting on the edge of the operating table. She was still hugging Uncle Chen's arm as she kept calling out, "Uncle Chen, Uncle Chen." At that moment, even Commander-in-Chief Xia was in tears. This child, Xiaoye, had experienced several life-and-death separations. Now that even Old Chen had left, he was a little worried about whether she could make it through. It would be great if sixth brother could accompany her at this time. He could face it with her and shoulder most of the grief for her. He could comfort her and encourage her. Unfortunately, when he needed sixth brother the most, he wasn't there. Sigh. Commander-in-Chief Xia pulled Yi Qian up. He said to Yi Qian, "Lass, go and get a clean military uniform for your Uncle Chen. We have to put it on him." Although your Uncle Chen's life was short, it was inspiring. He guarded the borders of our motherland and defended the dignity of our country. He sniped countless dangerous people who threatened our country and used a sniper rifle in his hands to achieve victory after victory. Now that he's gone, you're a sniper who he personally taught. You've accepted his legacy, taken over the sniper rifle in his hands, and shouldered the responsibility he handed to you. Now that he's gone, you have to shoulder everything he handed to you. You can't forget it just because he's gone. Chapter 4038. Commander-in-Chief Xia's voice was very penetrating, causing cracks to appear in the armor of grief that enveloped Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who was immersed in grief, moved her dazed eyes slightly. A faint light appeared in her dark eyes that were covered by the darkness. It was this faint light that allowed Commander-in-Chief Xia to know how he should continue to persuade her. He gently stroked Yi Qian's head. At this moment, Commander-in-Chief Xia was not the commander-in-chief of the military. He was just a kind elder who cared about the younger generation in his family. You've already taken over Uncle Chen's gun and taken over the responsibility that he once shouldered. Now, the gun and the responsibility are in your hands. That's why he still had a faint smile on his face when he left. Because he knew that you would never let him down. Without him by your side, you would still continue to walk on bravely and become a world-class sniper king like him. So, Yi Qian, you have to carry it well. Don't let Uncle Chen down. Yi Qian was no longer lying numbly by the operating table as if she had lost her soul. She raised her head and looked at Commander-in-Chief Xia. Before her lips moved, tears slowly flowed out again. Seeing this made Commander-in-Chief Xia's heart ache. You have to remember how Uncle Chen passed away. Someone shot him in the heart. Do you know that this is murder? Think about it. As a world-class sniper, your Uncle Chin's observational skills and sensitivity are at a level that ordinary people can't match. At the moment of danger, as a sniper, he should have more or less sensed it and reacted immediately, right? But why didn't he avoid it at that time? Why did he only sense it when the bullet was very close to him? Then he reacted, but it was already too late. The other party used a dirty bomb. Obviously, they knew how good Uncle Chun was and deliberately replaced the normal bullet with a dirty bomb. If it was just a normal bullet this time, then the person who was hit would only suffer and not die. But a dirty bomb is different. As a sniper, he knows the power of a dirty bomb best. Dad, with your intelligence, you should understand that this was a well-prepared murder that we didn't notice at all. Who killed Uncle Chun? Who are the other murderers behind the murder? You have to find them all, understand? You have to pull yourself together and find them all to comfort your Uncle Chin's soul in heaven. It was these words that made Yi Qian wake up bit by bit from the chaos. Clarity returned to her mind bit by bit, and she no longer let sadness control her emotions. Get up, child. Dad will help you up. Commander-in-Chief Xia held Yi Qian's arm and pulled Yi Qian, who had been kneeling on the cold ground for more than an hour, up. He heard Yi Qian say softly, "Dad, I want to find the killer who killed Uncle Chun. I must kill him with my own hands. Dad supports you." But little Yi, there's still something you don't understand. If the other party could kill your Uncle Chun with one shot, how good do you think their sniping skills are? Have you thought about it? I won't stop you from killing your enemy with your own hands, but you have to be clear about your own abilities. Your Uncle Chun was already so good, but he was still killed with one shot. Dad thinks that this sniper skills are also world-class. And your skills have already reached world-class? This was a question Commander-in-Chief Xia left for Yi Qian. It was also a question that could make Yi Qian walk out of his sadness as soon as possible and stand up again. Chapter 4039. He understood this child. She looked docile, but in reality, she was as stubborn as old Six. After being provoked by him, not only would she not be defeated, but she would also be able to recognize the truth. What he wanted was for her to recognize the truth as soon as possible. She must not be dispirited. As long as her willpower was not dispirited, then she would be able to overcome any setbacks. She would even be able to turn the setbacks into motivation. She would once again grow from adversity and once again rely on her own strength to walk out of a difficult situation. For Xiao Yi, as a soldier, this was a kind of improvement. Yi Qian listened, especially when she heard the words, "And have you reached the world-class level?" She instantly woke up from her daze. That's right, she had to ask herself if she had reached the world-class level. If not, what would she use to pay homage to Uncle Chun? What would she rely on to take revenge? How could her family rest assured that she would go after her enemies? Uncle Chun, you told her to take good care of herself. Your matter was too dangerous, so she should not interfere. Was it because you knew that she was not strong enough to fight against the murderer, so you did not allow her to interfere? She would not give up. She did not have the ability to fight against the murderer now, but she would in the future. She could endure for so many years to bring down Yi Jifan's family. Even if their family was right under her nose, she would still endure. Before she had the ability, the best protective weapon was patience. Yi Jian was someone who could listen to other people's suggestions, but she would not listen to all of them. She would weigh it in her heart and distinguish whether other people's suggestions were good or bad. She would naturally listen to the good ones, but she would say thank you for the bad ones. Commander-in-Chief Xia's suggestion was undoubtedly good. It was the most practical suggestion from her perspective, and it would allow her to recognize the truth in the shortest amount of time. She would naturally listen to such suggestions. She stood up and wiped away the tears on her face. Although her face was pale, her eyes were no longer as confused as when Commander-in-Chief Xia saw her earlier. Her dark eyes, which were as dark as the night, looked straight ahead with determination. Even her tightly pursed lips showed her determination. The child he had always admired fell from a high cliff. The cliff was too high, and the bottom of the valley was too deep. She was so injured that she couldn't see the sun in the sky when she looked up. However, She didn't give up on chasing the sun. She climbed out of the deep abyss with injuries all over her body. Even if the climb increased the number of injuries on her body, even if the bloody path she had climbed out of was behind her, she still stubbornly pulled herself out of the abyss. Such a girl was truly admirable. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the young female soldier. He looked at the girl who would become his family Xia's daughter-in-law in the future. He reached out his hand and gently stroked Yi Qian's head. His usually stern voice was only as gentle as a father's. "Come on, child. Dad believes that you will definitely be able to kill Shui Ran. You can definitely do it. When the day comes when you can compete with the murderer who is also a world-class sniper and kill him. Child, Dad believes that if your Uncle Chen's spirit is in heaven, he will be very gratified." This was the child that Old Chen had personally raised. Old Chen taught her to be strong and also told her the truth. Old Chen, it's all thanks to you that Old Xia can have such an outstanding daughter-in-law. Chapter 40. I, Xia Xinhui, will bow to you and thank you. From now on, this child will be taken good care of by family Xia. Don't worry, I won't let her suffer in life. If she suffers in life, family Xia and the Fu family will never forgive the person who made her suffer. Even old Six won't be able to bully her. Don't worry, Old Chun, you have me and old Fu. You can leave without worry. I know you're worried that this child will take revenge for you regardless of the consequences, so I persuaded her. You can leave without worry. Commander-in-Chief Xia said softly in his heart as he gently covered Uncle Chen's face with a white surgical cloth. Thank you, Old Chen. Thank you for nurturing an outstanding female Special Forces soldier for the country. You definitely don't know that because of Yi Qian's appearance, the military saw that women were more resilient than men and ordered all military regions to form an all-female Special Forces team. Thank you for allowing our family Xia to have such an outstanding daughter-in-law. You're the one who nurtured her, educated her, and guided her. Her achievements today are all thanks to you. Thank you, Old Chun. The white surgical cloth completely covered the wound. At this moment, Yi Qian knew that her Uncle Chun had really left. He had gone to a very, very far place and would never come back. Commander-in-Chief Xia bowed deeply and did not get up for a long time. This was a farewell when they would never meet again. Yi Qian knelt down again and kowtowed 3 times. She stood up and took the initiative to say to Commander-in-Chief Xia, "Dad, let's go out." She wanted to prepare a clean military uniform for Uncle Chun. She wanted to organize all the medals that Uncle Chun had received in the past and let Uncle Chun take them away. All of Uncle Chen's belongings were in the sniper base in Southern Province. She had to go back to Southern Province and organize them properly. She also had to leave something for herself. Just like when Uncle Jen left, she had to preserve it well. She walked out of the operating room and bowed deeply to the leaders of the sniper base and the provincial military to express her gratitude. The 2 leaders gently patted Yi Qian on the shoulder. A soft sigh was more than any consolation. When it was Political Commissar Yan's turn, tears welled up in Yi Qian's eyes again. Before Yi Qian could bend down, Political Commissar Yan had already supported him with both hands. It's only been 3 years since we last met, and you've grown taller again. You're really an adult now. The thin and weak little girl in his memory had disappeared. The girl standing in front of him had become a female soldier who could face any storm. Looking at the strong Yi Qian, Political Commissar Yin felt gratified and sad at the same time. He still remembered clearly how sad this child was when she sent Uncle Jen away. Now, she had to send Uncle Chun away. Political Commissar Yin gripped Yi Qian's shoulders tightly and said in a very serious voice, "Little girl, you're an adult now. You have to rely on yourself in the future. Whether it's good or bad, it's all up to you to decide. So, little girl, you have to take good care of yourself. Do you understand?" "Yes, I will definitely take good care of myself. I won't let Uncle Chin down." Yi Qian nodded. Her eyes were filled with sadness, but her eyes were filled with determination. She would not be defeated. If she was defeated, she would not be able to avenge Uncle Chun. So, she had to stand up. Yi Qian's answer did not make political commissar Yin question it, because he knew that the Yi Qian he knew would definitely do what she said. There was no need to comfort her. He knew that the sorrowful little girl who was kneeling in front of the operating room had already stood up. Chapter 40-41. Even the child who had been treated so harshly when she was a child had survived. This time, she would definitely survive. Life had given her hardships, so she would definitely be reborn again and again in the hardships, and every time she was reborn, she would be pushed to a higher peak. Officer Liu and his colleagues, who had been there all this time, couldn't help holding their breath when they saw the scene in front of them. Even the commander-in-chief was here. The late client, Uncle Chun, had such a powerful background that they increasingly felt that they probably wouldn't be able to investigate this case. Officer Liu's phone vibrated. He looked at it and saw that it was an unfamiliar phone number, but the ending number was that of a police officer in the bureau. Holding the phone, he walked to the side and picked it up. After about 2 minutes, he came back. After looking at several leaders, he finally walked to Commander-in-Chief Xia and whispered, "Commander-in-Chief, all the videos of the third eye near the train station have been copied out together with the master disk. We will prepare a copy ourselves and give the master disk to the military." "It's not necessary. Leave it to me." The cold-faced Commander-in-Chief Xia had decided not to let the police intervene. The police and the military were not in the same system. Old Chin's matter could only be solved by the military. The police would no longer intervene in order not to implicate the investigating officers. "I have already told your director about today's matter. You and your colleagues have worked hard today. The rest of the matter will be handled by the military. What you have seen today is all military secrets. Please abide by the military confidentiality regulations." Officer Liu was not surprised by Commander-in-Chief Xia's words. He had already vaguely realized that the police might not be involved in this matter. Now that it was confirmed, it was time for them to retreat. "Commander-in-Chief, we will definitely abide by the military confidentiality regulations. When we walk out of the hospital, it will be as if we have never been here. Our colleague has already sent the master disk. She should be in the elevator now. We will leave after you get the master disk." If the military needed the master disk, there was nothing safer than handing it over to the commander-in-chief. Nian Anian, who had taken the elevator up, stared at the constantly changing numbers above the elevator door. When she reached the floor, before the elevator door fully opened, she had already rushed out. She trotted all the way and soon saw Brother Liu, an old criminal police officer in the bureau, and then saw countless soldiers in military uniforms. She paused slightly, adjusted her breathing, and then strode over. "Brother Liu, this is the master disk." The bureau didn't have time to make a copy. Nian Anian walked over and handed the briefcase with the master disk. Out of the corner of her eye, she had already glanced at the surrounding soldiers. It alarmed the military to the point that a lieutenant general was present. Officer Liu took the master tape and handed it to Chief Commander Xia. "Chief Commander, this is the master tape. There's only one copy. All the data in the third eye is already in it. We have locked the data in the third eye for the past few days, according to the instructions from above. No one has the authority to view it except the chief." From Chapter 40-42. Yi Qian, who still wanted to look at the data, couldn't help but look up. Officer Liu and the others had recorded the data of the Skynet within 15 days, and this young policewoman said she found something suspicious. Did she fast forward while downloading the data? Officer Liu didn't have Zhou Yinyan's phone number, but he knew that Zhou Yinyan was an intern at the bureau last year. Her performance during her internship was quite impressive, and the SWAT team was very envious of her. They hinted that they wanted to recruit her into the SWAT team. This year, as expected, when Yin reported to work again, she really became a SWAT officer. She was also the only female SWAT officer in the SWAT team who worked as a SWAT officer. He was afraid that Commander-in-Chief Xiao wouldn't take Zhou Yinyan's words seriously. So he said, "Commander-in-Chief, Zhou Yinyan is a very capable SWAT officer. Don't be fooled by her young face. She is very capable." The subtext was, you can listen to the suspicious points she provides. Commander-in-Chief Xia was a little surprised when he heard this. He didn't expect to meet another policewoman who could find something suspicious while fast-forwarding. She was quite similar to Xiao Yi. He said to Yi Qian, "Xiao Yi, talk to Xiao Zhou." Yi Qian was waiting for orders. When he heard this, he immediately walked over and introduced himself first, then asked for Yan's advice. Yan saw this and didn't look down on Yi Qian because of his young age. She quickly told him the time and places she found something suspicious. In the end, she probably felt that she spoke a little too quickly, so she asked a little embarrassedly, "Did I speak a little too quickly? Why don't I write it down for you?" Yi Qian shook his head and thanked her sincerely. "No need. Thank you very much for your help. No need to thank me. No need to thank me. This is what I should do." Also, Yan's face darkened. She pursed her lips and said, "I was on duty at the train station at that time, but I didn't clean up these despicable people in time. This is my fault. I don't know how the person involved is doing. When his surgery is over, I have to apologize to him." Yi Qian lowered his eyes slightly and said softly, "You don't have to apologize. It's not your fault. You don't have to blame yourself. If a world-class sniper wanted to hide, how could he be discovered so easily? It was not Anniversary's fault. It had nothing to do with her. The military had already sent over the military uniform for Principal Chun, as well as a bright red national flag." Yi Qian didn't chat much with Yan Junyan. He said, "Thank you for your hard work," and left. When she saw Anniversaries, she seemed to have understood something. She stood there motionless, as if she had been hit in the head by something. The 4 guards quickly put on the casual clothes that their comrades had brought over. Then, the 4 of them entered the ward with solemn expressions. Principal Chun had already been transferred to the ward. Political Commissar Yin and the leader of the sniper base worked together to wipe away the blood and dirt between Principal Chen's fingers. Since he came in clean, he had to leave clean. Yi Qian saw Principal Chun, who had changed into his military uniform, lying quietly on the hospital bed. His eyes were kind, and there was a smile on his face. He looked as if he was asleep. The 4 guards had already unfurled the 4 corners of the national flag. In the snow-white ward, the color of the flag hit Yi Qian hard in the heart. She walked to the side of one of the guards and said softly, "Let me." Her Uncle Chun had even left his beloved military base by dying in battle when he retired. For the sake of his country, he couldn't even use his real name to stand under the sun. But Uncle Chun had never regretted it. Chapter 40-43. Now that he was gone, this was the only proof that he was a soldier, a true soldier. She wanted to accompany Uncle Chun to tell everyone that the principal of the middle school, the librarian of the provincial high school who didn't like to talk, was not an ordinary person. He was a soldier who had made countless contributions to the country. Covering the national flag was an acknowledgement of Uncle Chen's identity. She had to personally cover the national flag on Principal Chen's body. Your great achievements are destined to be unknown. This national flag is an acknowledgement of your life. Your footsteps will be recorded in history and will never be forgotten. The bright red national flag covered Principal Chen's body bit by bit, and his life was sealed. Salute! A deep and powerful voice rang out in the ward. Everyone, including Officer Liu, Zhou Yinyan, and the other police officers, saluted the soldier who had served the country. After this farewell, there would be no return. Yi Qian, who was standing in front, looked at Uncle Chun, who was covered by the national flag. Even though she had nowhere to vent her anger, she did not give up. Facing the cruelest reality, she, who was unwilling to let her family leave, was like a small blade of grass that grew out from a crack in a rock. No matter how big and difficult the obstacles were for her, she still held her head high and relied on her own strength to overcome them. Principal Chun did not hold a memorial service. In the end, he was turned into ashes and put into a small box. Yi Qian, who had not slept the entire night, hugged the box and said to Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had also not slept the entire night, "Dad, I want to bring Uncle Chun back to Nan Province. I want to bury Principal Chun with Grandpa General. I want to go back to Nan Province today." Uncle Chun had stayed in Nan Province for the longest time. Nan Province was also Uncle Chen's home. She wanted to bring Uncle Chen home. Looking at Yi Qian, whose eyes were bloodshot, Commander-in-Chief Xia told Yi Qian what Principal Chun had said before. He told her that Principal Chen's comrades were in the Yellow River and that he wanted to be buried with them. This is his last wish, and it's not something he mentioned casually. "Little Yi, send your Uncle Chun and his comrades to reunite." Yi Qian's heart trembled as he asked, "Can't I even bring Uncle Chun back to the sniper base he was at when he was alive? Can't you do that?" "My child, he only wants to leave by himself. He doesn't want too many people to send him off. I asked him before, and he told me that he had seen too many deaths in his life to know how it felt. That's why he didn't want anyone to know that he was gone. Dad also wants you to bring him back to the sniper base and let him see the troops he used to be in when he was alive. But, child, just let him go quietly. Let him go cleanly and without any attachments." Hearing this, Yi Qian's lips trembled slightly. She stood alone for a long time before she finally nodded gently. Commander-in-Chief Xia knew where Principal Chun had scattered the ashes of his comrades on the Yellow River. There were a total of 4 martyrs. Principal Chun cared about the company commander, the squad leader, and the last 2 comrades before he retired. Principal Chun had stood at the same place at different times to scatter the ashes of his comrades. On the day of her departure, when the plane took off, the sky was gloomy and it was drizzling. Yi Qian held a small box in her hand. The box was covered with the national flag folded to the 4 corners. She boarded the plane in the drizzle. Accompanying her were the leaders of the sniper base, the provincial military commander, political commissar Yin, and 4 security guards. Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't go with them. As the commander-in-chief, he had a lot of things to do. He even had several urgent matters to deal with. After sending Yi Qian off, he immediately took another plane to the border. Chapter 4044. When Yi Qian got off the plane, it was still drizzling. After a few twists and turns, he finally arrived at the Yellow River, where Principal Chun had personally sprinkled the ashes of his old company commander, squad leader, and 2 of his comrades. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a light drizzle. It was very cold here. Thick ice had formed by the riverside and under the rocks. Only the yellow water at the mouth of the waterfall was still mighty and powerful. It broke all the ice that was preventing it from surging forward and continued downstream with the broken ice. The cold wind messed up his hair, and the icy rain wet his face. Yi Qian walked step by step to the place where Principal Chun had once stood. There was a metal fence around the area, and he could not go any further. Standing there, Yi Qian raised his head and looked upstream. He saw the water, sand, and large chunks of ice rushing down from upstream. They surged with majestic momentum, and the sound was deafening. He stood on the grayish-brown rock and looked at the yellow river that had surged endlessly for thousands of years. He held the box tightly in his hands and did not move for a long time. Here, there were not only the heroic spirits of Uncle Chen's comrades, there were also the heroic spirits of many martyrs. The surging yellow water was accompanied by a bone-chilling wind. Yi Qian seemed to hear a war song in his ears. He lowered his head and looked at the box tightly held in his hands. He said softly, "Uncle Chun, I've brought you here. You'll be reunited with your comrades very soon. You said you didn't want to have a memorial service. You didn't want too many people to know about it. Look at you. Even at this time, you still want to be unknown." He slowly opened the box. The wind and rain blew past, wetting the white ashes and blowing away the ashes. Yi Qian knelt on the cold and wet rock. His hands trembled as he held the ashes. The wind blew, like a horn, like a cry. The rain poured down, like tears and sorrow. The strong wind blew away the ashes in his hands. Principal Chun, who had made countless contributions to the country, disappeared bit by bit. In the end, all that was left was the box that had once held his ashes. Looking at the empty box, Yi Qian blinked softly. A drop of water fell from his face into the box, but was unclear whether it was rainwater or tears. Gone, Uncle Chun was gone. From now on, she would never see Uncle Chun again. She would never hear Uncle Chin's stern voice that made her revere him. Gone, really gone. Closing the wooden box, Yi Qian kowtowed to the yellow river with red eyes. When she kowtowed for the third time, she remained kneeling for a long time without getting up, putting down the military salute that they had been saluting since the ashes were scattered. The group of people stood quietly. They did not try to persuade Yi Qian to come down earlier. The wind and rain were still blowing and falling. The person who had been kneeling for a long time was still kneeling. Her slender back was like a spear that had been temporarily placed at the bottom. When she got up, the spear would be ruthless and the knife would be cold. It would cut open the darkness with the knife and destroy all evil with bullets. Now, they were waiting for the spear-like female soldier to stand up. Goodbye, Uncle Chun. Yi Qian will come to pay respects to you next time. Yi Qian, whose forehead was bruised from kowtowing, stood up. The cold wind was so strong that the tip of Yi Qian's nose was red. Finally, she was no longer standing in the teeth of the storm. There were still long ice spikes below her. She carried the box and retreated from the high ground. She retreated between the leaders and the guards. This time, she completed the military salute alone. There was one more martyr and one more heroic soul in the unceasing flow of the Yellow River. When Yi Qian turned around to leave, she seemed to see a kind figure in the rain and the wind. Chapter 40-45. When she looked back, his back also looked back. What a familiar face, what a kind smile. Her Uncle Chun was waving goodbye to her. Yi Qian cried, and she laughed again. Between crying and laughing, Yi Qian raised her hand and waved towards the empty Yellow River. Political Commissar Yin followed her line of sight. Except for the rain, there was nothing else in front of them except for the yellow sky. Let's go, Yi Qian. It's time for us to return to the southern province, he said softly. He held on to Yi Qian's cold hand and led her away. Old Chun, I'll visit you again next time. If there's a chance, I'll bring Yi Qian along to visit you. I still have to visit Old Lu. I have to tell him that you've left. I don't know what he did in prison. I'll visit him this time and see if I can find out more about the situation. You've left. Old Lu is in prison. Our iron triangle relationship has broken up. Political Commissar Yin, who had become much more haggard after one night, held on to Yi Qian's hand tightly and left the Yellow River. They still had to return to the southern province together. They had to return to the sniper base to sort out Principal Chen's belongings. The commander-in-chief had said that Old Chun had left quietly, but his deeds could not remain unknown. They had to sort them out. After the murderer and all the people behind the murderer were found, Old Chen's deeds would become classified information in the military. They had to let the soldiers, who had become top snipers, know that their country once had a world-class sniper who had sacrificed his life for the country. Heroes should not remain unknown. Heroes should always live in people's hearts and become their beliefs. The soldiers and instructors at the sniper base all knew that their instructor Chun had been sacrificed. At 3:06 a.m., when the gate of the camp slowly opened and Yi Jian walked into the camp with the urn in her hands, a sorrowful and indignant salute sounded like a sudden clap of thunder. As all the soldiers raised their arms in an instant, Instructor Chun, who had greeted them with a military salute, returned to the base with a strong gust of wind. It was just an empty urn covered with the national flag, but they still greeted Principal Chun with the highest courtesy. Instructor Chun even had to leave quietly because he didn't want to alarm the base. However, every soldier here had received personal guidance from Instructor Chun. They couldn't send him off on his last journey, so they would welcome him home, even if it was just an empty urn. Instructor Chun had once slept in it. In the early morning, the sniper base was shrouded in deep sorrow. Yi Qian walked through the narrow path. She even heard the soldiers sobbing. They remembered Uncle Chun. They would remember Uncle Chun for the rest of their lives. Uncle Chun, you see, you never left. You will always live in the hearts of the soldiers. You are not destined to remain unknown forever. In the near future, your name will definitely be engraved on a monument of great achievements. The soldiers had already tidied up all the belongings. They just needed to hand them over to Yi Qian personally. The leader of the sniper base said to Yi Qian, "This room will always be maintained in its original state. The soldiers will take turns cleaning Instructor Chen's room. The cups on the table will be filled with water. The thermos will be filled with hot water every day. The bed will be tidied every day. The dust on the bookcase will be wiped clean every day. As long as the sniper base is still here, this will always be Instructor Chen's room." They were using this method to remember Instructor Chen, who had made all the soldiers learn a lot from sniping. They wanted to let every sniper who entered the sniper base in the future know that there was once an Instructor Chen who had taught countless outstanding snipers. Chapter 4046. Yi Qian's gaze swept across the room. She memorized every single detail of the room. She would never forget it for the rest of her life. All of his belongings had been organized. They would be sent to the military headquarters to be filed away one by one. Yi Qian left behind the clothes hanger that Principal Chun had used. When the time came, she would use this clothes hanger to hold up the military uniform that she would wear when she entered the army after graduation. She would tell Uncle Chun that she had truly become a soldier of iron when she entered the army. If she could still come back to the sniper base, she would definitely come back to take a look. Because even now, she could still remember the expression on Uncle Chin's face when he walked into the sniper base. He was so happy that she had never seen him before. Even the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes had formed a few lines when he smiled that day. As a sniper, Uncle Chun truly loved this place. That was why he didn't think it was a big deal when he was told not to take even half a step out of the base. Now that he had left this sniper base that he deeply loved, if she could, she would definitely come back to take a look and then tell Uncle Chun about the changes that had happened here. At this moment, Yi Qian was the only one in the room. This was Commissar Yan's suggestion. He wanted her to sit alone in the room that Principal Chun had once stayed in and release her sadness for the last time. After she walked out of this room, she would begin a new journey. Just as Commissar Yin said, Yi Qian walked out of the room at dawn. She had already put away her sadness. Her journey had already begun. She had to fight for her journey. The soldiers at the sniper base buried Principal Chen's urn in the shooting range. Yi Qian stood in front of the newly dug mound. She took a cigarette from Commissar Yin and stuck it into the mound. It was only today that she found out that Uncle Chun had been a heavy smoker a long time ago, especially during his first 2 years at the town's middle school. At his peak, he would smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Political Commissar Yin, who was sitting beside the small mound, had just said all of this. Yi Qian sat in the room until dawn, and Political Commissar Yin had been sitting there talking about the past until Yi Qian came over. When they left the sniper base, Political Commissar Yin asked Yi Qian if he knew that Lu Tuan was currently in prison. He wanted to go over and take a look, so he asked Yi Qian if he wanted to come along. He smiled bitterly as he still did not know how his old partner ended up in prison. Yi Qian knew, but she didn't answer. She avoided the topic and said softly, "I'm sorry, I can't accompany you to visit Lu Tuan. When you see Tuan Lu, please send my regards to him. Hey, you don't have much time now. Let's go to the airport first." Political Commissar Yin didn't ask any more questions. He went to the airport with Yi Qian. For guards from the capital carried Principal Chen's belongings and went to the airport to prepare to fly to the capital. Yi Qian really didn't have much time to visit Lu Tuan. Moreover, she wasn't prepared to face Lu Tuan, who had shot her mother, again. Now, she needed to hurry up and watch the police's copy of the master tape to find out what was wrong with the thousands of people. The military had already arranged for technicians to watch the master tape. They would first observe the time period before the anniversary, then further verify and investigate. Yi Qian's schedule was even more tight. All the students would report back to school the day after tomorrow. If she couldn't find anything suspicious by dawn, then she would have to return to school and couldn't be delayed by other matters. She didn't want to disturb old Master Fu when she returned to the capital again. She didn't want him to worry about her, and she didn't want to bring danger to him. Before she found the murderer, she couldn't implicate her grandfather and Father Fu. This was also what Commander-in-Chief Xia thought. Chapter 4047. Commander-in-Chief Xia knew Yi Qian's itinerary very well. When he found out that she was going to watch the master videotape provided by the police, Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was still sitting in a military vehicle heading to the border, was silent for a while. He then said to the guard beside him, "Let the guard take her to the security center. At the same time, let the guard there remind her to be more careful. After watching it, immediately return to school and don't go out again." The guard immediately relayed the commander-in-chief's order to the guard beside Yi Qian, who was on the phone with him, so that Yi Qian would know immediately. The 4 guards had been accompanying Yi Qian all this time. Now, instead of accompanying her, it was more like protecting her. After relaying Commander-in-Chief Xia's order, Yi Qian nodded gently. She actually knew that what she was doing was not very appropriate. If the Commander-in-Chief hadn't arranged it for her, it would have been very difficult for her to get access to the master videotape that had already been sent to the military. She also knew that even if she saw the master videotape, she might not be able to find any clues after watching so many days of surveillance footage. She knew all this. However, when she thought about how Uncle Chun had been shot by the internationally banned dom ejector, she couldn't control her urge to find the murderer. Regardless of whether she could find the murderer from the footage, she still wanted to see it. She also knew what the commander-in-chief was worried about, which was why she still had 4 guards by her side. Uncle Chun said that if he left, he didn't want to alert anyone and just wanted to leave quietly. She knew that Uncle Chun had been silent his whole life and didn't want the world to know about it. However, she also knew that leaving quietly was mostly because of her. As a last resort, he would inform Yi Qian. It could be understood that he would only tell her if he really couldn't take it anymore. If he could, he would keep it secret. This was because her Uncle Chun didn't forget to remind her before he left, "Don't go. It's dangerous." She knew that there was danger ahead. She wouldn't take the risk easily. Just as the commander-in-chief said, before she became a world-class sniper and had the ability to fight crime, she wouldn't take the risk. She promised Uncle Chun that she wouldn't put herself in danger, so she wouldn't be reckless anymore. She would take good care of herself and not let Grandpa Jin and Uncle Chun worry about her safety. Soon, Commander-in-Chief Xia received a text message from Yi Qian on his cell phone. After reading it, a gratified smile appeared in his eyes. Little Yi, this child, is not old, but it is rare for her to see through everything. She understood his concern. She knew that they had no clue who the murderer was, and he was worried that she would be put in danger because of Lao Chun. Therefore, she said that she would return to school immediately after watching the video. "It's fine as long as you're clear." With a smile in his eyes, the commander-in-chief sent a text message to Yi Qian. After reading it, Yi Qian was filled with gratitude. Old Master Fu is not in the capital. Don't worry. After reading this text message, Yi Qian's vision couldn't help but become a little blurry. She had sent away 2 of her closest relatives, but now she had a close relative like the commander-in-chief by her side. She was so lucky in this lifetime. She was afraid that she would alarm her grandfather. Her grandfather had always said that he wanted to thank Uncle Chun in person for taking care of her all these years. However, before that day came, Uncle Chun had already passed away. If her grandfather knew that Uncle Chun was murdered, she would definitely investigate. If her grandfather knew, he would definitely not be able to rest easy. His health was not good to begin with. And if he were to worry about her, she was worried that her grandfather's body wouldn't be able to take it. It would be fine if Father Fu was around. She wasn't afraid that Uncle Chun would find out about his death, but she didn't dare let her grandfather know. This was also the reason why she didn't tell her grandfather that she had returned to the capital twice in the past few days. Chapter 4048. Now that her grandfather was not in the capital, she was indeed relieved. Looking at the 4 guards beside her, Yi Qian thought for a moment and decided to call Commander-in-Chief Xia. She did not send any more text messages. It was easier to explain things over the phone. After she finished explaining her intentions, Commander-in-Chief Xia sighed and said, "When you arrive at school, they will return to the guard company. You don't have to feel pressured. Dad, there's really no need. After they send me to the security center, you can order them to go back. It's been hard on them to follow me these past few days. I'll be fine. If the other party really had their eyes on me, I think they would have taken action while I was still hospitalized in the Southern Province Armed Police Hospital. If it were me, I would definitely take action together if I knew there was an unexpected existence that could cause problems. But they didn't. So, I don't think they know about my existence at all. Let them go back to the guard company to rest. I'm already going to the security center. Are you still worried that something will happen to me there? That place is heavily guarded. What would happen if something happened to me there?" Commander-in-Chief Xia actually thought of Yi Qian's thoughts. If the other party really knew about her existence, they would definitely have taken care of Yi Qian with their meticulous planning. But the other party did not. Either the other party did not know about Xiao Ye's existence, or they did not find out about Xiao Ye's whereabouts. He was more inclined to the latter. She was not wrong. If something happened to her in the security center, what would happen? Moreover, it was indeed against the rules to directly send 4 guards to protect Yi Qian. Fortunately, she would be going to the security center later. Then, let the 4 guards send her there and then return to the guard company. After the 4 guards received the commander-in-chief's order, they sent Yi Qian to the security center. They left a car there and then directly returned to the guard company. However, Yi Qian did not manage to gain anything from this trip. The people mentioned by Nian were not directly related to the shooting of Uncle Chun, but these people were definitely suspicious. 2 of them were fugitives from serious crimes. When Yi Qian brought Principal Chen's ashes to the Yellow River, these 2 fugitives were also caught on the train heading south. At the security center, Yi Qian had fast-forwarded all the videos 3 times from 2 p.m. the day before yesterday to 8 p.m. tonight. Finally, he gave up. Indeed, there was nothing to gain. Tomorrow was the day she had to report back to the military academy. She could not stay in the capital. She had to return to the academy tomorrow. Yi Qian rubbed his dry eyes as he watched the video. He suppressed the bitterness in his heart, picked up the cold coffee, and drank it in one gulp. The coolness of the coffee made her chest feel cold. What made her heart even colder was the enemy had come prepared and hidden so well that they did not leave any traces. National Defense suspects that the murderer snuck into our country. All the weapons used were transported into our country through overseas shipments. The entire murder plan was not set up in a day or 2. It took a very long time and very careful planning before it was carried out. There is no way to find any traces from the videos. We can only investigate the reason Principal Chun came to the capital. But Uncle Chun had already left. How could they investigate? Yi Qian walked out of the security center. He stood in the cold wind and looked up at the cold moon hanging in the sky. The enemy had come prepared and used a dummy bullet. It was obvious that they had used a bullet to cut off Uncle Chen's escape route. They had come prepared. How could they leave any traces so easily? You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.